place is so important. Place informs everything that we do. It's what we come from. It's the first thing that we know. So with that in mind, the Sea Islands, which is what there's a string of Sea Islands all the way from, I think, North Carolina to Florida. So the Sea Islands are important to us because this is where our ancestors came. The enslaved people came through Charleston. They came through all these ports. There are estuaries all up and down the coast. And even after slavery was outlawed, they brought in what they call contraband. So there were places all here. I live on St. Simon's Island. I live on one of the Sea Islands. One of the reasons that we live there, I'm from Macon, Georgia, which is in the middle of the Georgia state, but I always wanted to live by the ocean. My husband and I went to St. Simon's Island for our honeymoon. We were just looking for somewhere to go to the ocean. We were living in Atlanta. And when I drove across, there was a two-lane drawbridge. But when we went across it, before it was at night, it was raining. And we came across, and when I got right to where the causeway ends, and you're right on the island, you're driving onto the island, I heard a voice that said, "This is where you belong." I am a little creepy. I do write a little bit about ghosts and spirits and all of that. But I'd never had any kind of experience happen to me like that. And so my husband didn't hear it, but he said he heard something. He said, "What was that?" And I said, "What was what?" Because I didn't want to be the first one to say it. And he says, I don't know. And I said, so I started quizzing him. I said, "Was it music?" He said, "No, the music's off." He says, "I don't know." He said, "I don't know." I said, and then I told him what had happened, what I had heard. And ever since that moment, I knew that the Sea Islands was where I belong. This is meaningful for Black people. This is meaningful that we can go back and and see where we came from. We may not be able to say exactly who that person was, who married that other person who then went on to create my family. But we can come back to this space and say, this is how it was.
Wow.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good everything. What were we watching?
That was Tina McElroy, Ansa, who made transition this week. And that was Kiowa, the beach where we had our last Healthy Wealthy Wives, and the one in January where she was a featured honored guest. I got a call this week from Dr. Daniel Black. It was like urgent. And I was like, okay. And he told me he got a call that she was found unresponsive in her home. And it a little bit broke my heart. At the same time, her husband, she married, they were together 42 years. And there was still a hole in her heart with his departure. She always talked about him. And so part of me was also smiling because, first of all, we got a mighty ancestor she ain't to play with, okay? But also I know she's rejoined with her husband. So I was like, okay, all right. I don't know what happened, but it was my honor to be able to honor her, to be able to treat her like the queen that she is. And also make that connection to belonging, because this is part of what we do here every day, but particularly on Saturdays, is to remind people to remember us. So I just wanted to center that, since today we are moving away or confronting head on, responding to the absurdity of the life that we are presented with here, with potential lynchings in North Carolina and all manner of ridiculousness that it appears to be like the last gasps of something that's dying. It's most dangerous. They say a cornered dog is its most dangerous. America's a cornered dog, and we are in it. So We have
Hopefully, it doesn't eat us, or maybe we'll eat it. I don't know. It's a lot of dog eating this week.
yeah, I was not gonna bring that up.
I mean, it has to be. We gotta confront it, right? But no. Can we sit with her for a minute, because that is news that really does hit very hard. Tina McElroy Ansa. I mean, to her family, we ring the bell for her, because that sister, Macon, Georgia, first black woman, or first black period to work for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, if memory serves me correctly.
Yeah.
Is that right? Spelman grad, fierce defender not only of her birth hometown, but St. Simon's, her adopted, as you capture her there, talking about those Sea Islands. Just a powerful, powerful spirit. And a true cultural meaning maker. And we got a glimpse of her there in that beautiful moment with her sitting there talking about who she convenes with when she's cultural meaning making, someone who propelled movement and memory, who let us bring forward the memory of the past in the living now. Just a medium of sorts, letting the spirit speak through her. And now she is, as you say, on her ancestral journey. She's going to be a powerful ancestor.
And just to sew it in, that was Mecca Film Works, Howard University, bred some couple of your students.
Those youngsters, yeah.
I mean, again, to be in community, it's like the wealth of talent is endless. It's endless with us, right? And so you brought so many beautiful people, and the threads we're pulling together to build this tapestry of what comes next. And I'm just grateful. Shout out to TL Blendon and the crew there. Because I was like, listen, we've had this in the bank, from January. And I said, can you pull something just to honor her and make it beautiful? I can give many other direction. And
so that you knew. I mean, we know those rhythms. If we were truly in tune, we could tell some of these other things, but something spoke to you. And that's just a beautiful And now with you, urging, moving, showing us the way to create those texts, those documentaries, those films, that animate, those animation pieces, the books. I mean, for her to have founded Down South Press to tell those Black stories, and now it's up to this generation, and for you to make sure that we have these things and open up these moments to be able to do that kind of work. I was at Sankofa yesterday and talking with a brother who is a filmmaker, one of Haile's Karima's contemporaries, and well, kind of like proteges, because he's one of his students. And he just finished doing some work with John Batiste, and he was talking about how these students who are taking this filmmaking class have graduated from it, that Haile and Garima teaches. He sold them into this work, and so John Batiste has a new album that's coming out shortly, and some of the work on the album, the photography, the cinematography on the videos, was done by this next generation. And what he was saying was that everybody benefits, and when people show they have the drive, the talent, the determination, and the desire to do for the community, it's our responsibility to help those people, because they're contributing to something bigger than all of us, and we're trying to do the same thing. So, I mean, this is an example of it.
And we're the standard.
Oh no, that was the point. We're the standard. Everybody can't do it, and that's fine.
Because we have been conditioned to believe that if it's not white, it's not right. That somehow the standard is something else other than the source. The source is the standard. I was watching these TikTok videos of K-pop. K-pop studied us and perfected every movement, every hair in place, every note. It is an exact mimic of the doo-wop all the way through to Jackson 5, all the way through New Edition, all the way through, right? So I had a little brief discussion with a brother this week on the radio following the debate. We haven't been together since the debate, but so he was like, she was a little out of pocket, Kamala Harris, because with her facial expressions, got to keep it tight. And I said, for who?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, you gotta, you can't let them see who's they, why, who, what,
Right.
so she's got to do what now? So, and I completely disagree with him. And we had a little brief argument on
Oh,
radio.
yeah. He posted
Yeah,
a clip of that.
but
Yeah.
what I was confronted with, Dr. Carr, is that the standard in so many people's minds is something that is actually an imitation of a facsimile of something that doesn't exist or shouldn't exist, right? Which is this decorum, this way of being that nobody follows except we are expected to follow because our bodies are the only bodies that get policed in this country. So,
Yeah.
I'm like, I reject that roundly. Yeah, she has decorum and grace and charm, all of the things. She didn't have to behave a certain way to make other people comfortable. Even that notion, because they don't behave that way. I've been in offices where bosses have thrown papers and yelled and screamed and cussed at people and
Of
stomped
course.
around, and that's widely acceptable as behavior for somebody in charge.
Whiteness is a powerful.
We're supposed to.
Was a powerful, compelling. I mean, it speaks to the layers and the complexity and the difficulty that we're trying to get out with this Africana Studies framework. It all exists. It's all real. It all has impact. It all has weight. And the decisions we make in the reality we live in go a long way toward determining how we respond. And so much of what we have now is absurd, things beyond our ability to control directly, but how we respond determines it. So, when we talk about that African States framework, who are we to other people? That caller is giving his perspective out of a social structure framework, which is completely legitimate. We understand.
I was
Right?
gonna say, I understood exactly what he was saying.
Yeah.
When do we stop?
Well, we never stop in the governance formation, and you were speaking out of a governance logic. And sometimes people can't hear that because they haven't realized that you're not listening with a governance ear. You're listening with a framework that has you asking a funded grounding question: who are you to somebody else? Because if the idea is that the vice president shouldn't respond that way, period, at her house, among her friends, at Howard Homecoming, where she's around, I'm sure the caller would say, oh, no, that's fine. Oh, okay. So it's not that you can't be human. It's that you are more concerned with how other people look at you than you are about being yourself. And at that point, it's like, oh, well, no, just say it. It's okay. Say that, because we've all been in that space. We're using this funky English language. We're doing the best we can with a garbage can collision between the Germanic languages and Latin, and we've given it some verve and some soul, like everybody else who's contributed to it. But ours seems to be much more foundational. And in those moments when no question, and in the moment when in front of the entire assembled human community, the vice president of the United States turns to an adult racist convicted sexual assaulter and says, "This was that inappropriate? I didn't say anything, but if you speak fluent Ebonics, you know exactly. I just called this man a Maryland farmer in front of millions." And it was not only entirely appropriate, every gesture, every pause, every facial expression has now become a meme that is generating more free publicity for the Harris-Walz campaign than all of the billionaires combined. So it seems to me that was a brilliant display of how to flirt between governance logics and social structure logics in a way that not only doesn't harm you, but like her laugh, or like her evoking her mother's question, are you going to act like you just fell out of a coconut tree, become, in a moment of a zeitgeist and a momentum, an asset. Seems like the vice president is riding a wave, friends. I don't know how many votes that translates into, but it's not a detriment. It's an asset, if anything.
Wow. Nearly 500,000 people in 24 hours went on vote.org. Thanks to Tay-Tay, Taylor Swift's endorsement, which has made some MAGA people's heads pop off and threaten to burn her CDs like she's bothered. You're not going to harm that lady's bottom line. And she made a clear decision that Patrick Mahomes would never make, or Michael Jordan for that matter, if he could do that.
Patrick Mahomes and our good dear friend brother, who seems, maybe, I don't know, a little haunted maybe by his famous statement when Harvey Gantt could have been put over the top to get rid of that racist Jesse Helms, and Michael Jordan from Wilmington, North Carolina, said Republicans buy sneakers too, and seems like for the rest of his life been trying to put little drips and drabs in the path to make up for that moment when his character was called into question, and then unlike his 6 NBA championships, he lost miserably. I don't know. I mean, yeah. I mean, what do you think the impact is going to be of this swift endure? I heard you and Rod talking about, Rod, it's always interesting to hear the two of you all, because, in addition to just having all these layers, y'all both are deep, kind of deeply conversant with pop culture. So to hear things I don't know, because it comes in kind of incidentally on the way to a larger point, is always so educational. Plus y'all laughing too, so it makes me crack up when I look. But
he is absolutely, one of the best partners I could have on the radio, because he's a deep thinker who's very Southern,
yeah.
very regular, steeped in this anime, different generation, so I'm learning and, I'm asking questions as well. But because he's a severe introvert, he spends a lot of time in his headspace, and so, I'm pulling him out as well, even though he has this platform. It's wonderful because he makes me think, because he thinks differently than I do. So I'm constantly sitting there like, okay, I ain't see that.
Yeah,
I didn't see that. And he's coming through a comedy writer's lens, or writer's room lens. Yeah, it was a great conversation. If y'all missed it yesterday, we were very silly, which is also part of who we are, right? The joy part. But yeah, no, this where we are right now, I think it's incumbent upon us to step fully into our wholeness, right?
yes.
I also talked about this brother in Atlanta, Nathaniel. I can't think of his name right now. There was a woman in Atlanta, a Black woman, who promotes a lot of Black women brands. Her store was going out of business, and she went to social media and was like, "This might be my last day." And he corralled like hundreds of Black people and did a flash mob. Now, flash mobs, people usually dancing and stuff. They came, and his edict was, and he's got like 600,000 followers on Instagram. He was like, let's show up. If it's $10, if it's $1,000, we're going to buy everything in her store. And they showed up and bought everything in her store and saved her business. And I said, that's what we can do. So the impact of Taylor Swift, not sure what it's going to be, but I do know that the white women were the problem in 2016.
Interesting.
And in 2020, by the way.
It's funny how white men get a pass. I mean, white maleness is the ultimate power,
No, but we expect that of them to act.
Well, that's true.
Well,
that's
that's the default behavior, right?
So how do you respond to
it? Everybody else, because there's more of us than there are them.
Very true.
Show up fully and do what you're supposed to do. We ain't got to worry about them.
It makes for a very interesting dynamic in a sense, because that is absolutely true. I think the first place I ever read it as an analysis of behavior, that once you read the analysis, you realize we've all been seeing this, is in Mike Gomez's book, Exchanging Our Country Marks, when he was going through the narratives of former captives, like we did. Some of the things he consulted. Remember when we were looking at Ophelia Settled Egypt a couple of years ago, and her work recording the memories of those who were formerly captive back in the 1930s with Charles Johnson. And one thing Mike Gomez says is that these interviewers, many of whom were white in the Works Progress Administration, interviewing this last generation of people who have been captive in the 1930s, they're asking them, well, what did they say about how y'all were captured, how your ancestors were brought here? And they tell them these stories that Mike clustered under this phrase, the King Buzzard story. There was this big buzzard like the ship, and it came and and then they're talking about how Black people tricked other Black people with red cloth and mirrors, and they felt betrayed. And these continental Africans are getting lured onto these boats or beaten up by violence. Of course, we read Barracoon in Nubia, so that whole process. And at the end of these interviews, these white interviewers, many of them were like, well, what about white people? Because, you know, when somebody white is talking, it's generally, where am I in this? And one by one, these formerly captive Africans, now in their advanced age, looked at them and said, oh, we didn't have any expectation. That's what white people do. And it was like, but the hurt was somebody looked like me participated in the beginning. But when we got to the white people, that's what they do. And I'm saying, if that's true, then why would we ever have any expectations of America? I'm really trying to understand it. I mean, and I'm not saying, I'm saying, okay, you're married, Vice President, to a white man, not because you didn't date black men, because you didn't go with black men, because you don't like black men or women or whatever you like. That's not anybody's business. You just so happen to be married to a white man. Your vice president candidate is a white man, in no small part because he is the whitest man, perhaps, to be on the bottom of a vice presidential ticket for the Democratic Party since Lyndon Johnson. and so let's be clear. Race and whiteness and white maleness plays a formative part in the political thinking that we deal with. And at the same time, things come out of your mouth like our mouths. Well, we got to be better. We got to build a different. Well, I don't say our mouths. I never say that, and I never will for the rest of my life. We've got to build a better country. No, I'm engaged in an act of lifelong self-defense, and improving the society is for my defense. But I don't confuse that with the idea that, as my mama would say, white folks gonna do what they want to do. Now, when you gonna do what you want to do? But I don't want to. I'm just wondering. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to do with that. I'm just voicing it to see us.
And primarily because I get to be with you every Saturday and beyond. I now see the possibility of what this space, as Tina McElroy says, space is where we all enter.
Yes.
Space, right? So how much control? I feel like we've been addled with this notion that somehow we have no control over the outcome. So we abdicate our power to the default, which has always been upside down, because these same people planting the same crop until it turns till the soil turns to dust. Right? Tobacco, because they don't understand. They done brought Africans over who understand, and then told them what to do. This has been the story of America. People that don't know anything, who are mediocre, who couldn't survive where they were, who couldn't survive where they came to, needed help of other people, and then had the audacity to enslave or to commit genocide against or to destroy via media or otherwise the very thing that got them here and alive and wealthy.
That's right.
So if that's the story, we get to write our own narratives.
Yes.
We got the pen now.
We got the pen.
So
we've got the pen.
What's the story look like? Are we addled, so conditioned, so like the elephants in the circus that we don't know that we have power? Or are we going to step out into our wholeness and say, hey, from language to music to everything.
That's right.
Fashion, that's us. So run me back my, not even run me back. Excuse me. That's mine. Thank you. you. That's mine. Thank you. That's up. And then disperse, distribute. Here. Oh, young people, you can do this too. It's yours. You have a brain. You have a spirit. You got ancestors. What do you want to create? Let's build it. Come on, let's go.
That's right.
And even in forming businesses, even as we think about education, what should it look like? Not the VC funding and we got to go. Yeah, I was watching the Fearless Fund situation, and you and Lamont talked about it as well.
Just a little bit. Yeah.
But even the notion that somehow we're going to go get a round of funding. My daddy didn't start his grocery store that he had for 18 years that put me through school with no student loans, that had us have a house that was paid for and new cars every couple of years. He didn't get VC funding. His father started the store. Yeah. And then when his father died, his mother took it over. She didn't know how to run it. He went to college, got a degree in business administration, came back to go to the store and ran a business. And then bought property, that then had employed the children from the neighborhood, that then had a vision for his family. We didn't get a round of funding, Dr. Carr. My father was a millionaire at some point in his life. I saw the money in his safe. He kept it.
I know that's right.
He didn't invest right. He had $500,000 in the safe in our house. I was like, with the gun. But I was like, I don't know if that's good. But next generation, I'm investing. Do you know what I'm saying? So you have everything, we've been conditioned to believe this is the pathway because they told us that, because they need our labor, our ingenuity, our genius. They need us.
That's right. That's right.
And
That's right.
and let me just say, the we, not black and white to me. You know, yesterday I had a brother, because I was talking about triskaidekaphobia, which Friday the 13th, and
Mm-hmm.
Paris triskaidekaphobia is the fear of Friday the 13th or something. And
Mm-hmm.
I was talking about the number 13 and how, you know, numerology plays a part in the Jewish faith. And when you go into elevators and different places, you'll know if it's a Jewish building. But I had it backwards because they love the number 13.
Yes.
It's a powerful number in that faith. So the brother called up and reminded me. I was like, oh, that's right. And I said, Baruch Hashem. And he was like, oh, thank you. You know, but then, and I said, how often do you listen? He said, I listen every day. You know, so you know, and I know that what we're talking about is not race as much as it is, because even that's a made up construct, right? It's tradition, it's culture, it's ways of knowing.
Yeah.
And in all ways, the center is that continent that we all come from. So let's get back to that. Let's, as you said, the children are running the damn. Nope. Sit down, eat your vegetables. Let's go.
Right. Right.
Just take this power away from these children. They are ruining the world. And let's go.
I hope we can. I mean, I don't say I hope we can. We don't have any option but to try. And then the question is, what's going to happen? And things will reset either way.
Listen, what do we have to lose?
Our lives, everything. But we can.
No, I'm flipping it, because, you know, Trump's thing was, what do you have to lose? No, we have nothing to lose. In this case, what do we have to lose stepping into our power? Let's try it.
We have to try it. We have to try.
See what happens. You know, right. I'm actually very optimistic.
I stay optimistic because we get to live every day. Every day of life, we get another chance. It's funny. Yesterday, the brother Jeffrey Sterling, Dr. Sterling, who came on in the morning, Jeff Sterling, who chaired both the National and Illinois State Black Chamber of Commerce Healthcare Committee, and the first Surgeon General. It's interesting how we give these titles to each other, but the first Surgeon General in the history of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity came on, and we were talking about the gift that Bloomberg Charities, Michael Bloomberg Charities, gave to Bloomberg Charities gave to the 4 Black medical schools, along with a $5 million grant to Xavier that's in partnership in developing medical school in Louisiana, there in New Orleans, and $75 million to Charles Drew Medical Center in LA, and then Meharry, Morehouse School of Medicine, Howard University School of Medicine will receive $175 million each in 3 of those 4 cases, more than doubling their endowment, totaling over $600 million. And Dr. Sterling said, you know, he's launching a Sterling Foundation, because he said that he said, you know, did I hear you talking to me? He said, did I hear you, Dr. Carr, say that Bloomberg should have done more? I said, yeah. At this point, I think he's over the $4 billion mark in donations to his alma mater, Johns Hopkins. And if you go to Johns Hopkins Medical School, you go to school for free. That has been the endowment, like that medical school in Queens that has a similar thing because of an angel investor, angel donor. And he said, yeah, that's fine, but why would we expect him to do anything? And of course, I didn't respond and say I don't expect him to do anything. But since we talking, and since you got the money, Bloomberg, you should give maybe 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 or 15 billion, whatever the hell, you know. But at any rate, he said he's starting this because he wants to, over the next decade, ramp to the point where there is $1 billion in the Sterling Foundation. He can make these kind of investments. And I think that's an incredible response to the absurdity of late stage capitalism generally, but certainly late capitalism, the period we're living in now. I think that's a great response. I also think that you can't catch up, and that while you're doing that, we also have to engender a cultural shift that allows us to understand that material resources are indispensable in the world. We live in a world. We're breathing, we're walking, we have to eat, we have to be inside, we have to have some form of protection from at least the elements and the other animals, including many of whom who walk on 2 feet and speak like we do, use speech, that is language. At the same time, we have to understand that the cultural shift has to at some point take us past using money as a proxy for value. We're not nearly there. We won't be there in our lifetimes. And even as we hear people criticize the Vice President of the United States for, as they say, flip-flopping or doubling on fracking, the simple fact of the matter is that most people don't care about fracking, which is sad. When people say they don't care about fracking, I tend to think you don't know enough about what it is and what it does and how that speaks to the larger ecosystem of existential threat to the species and to all living things presented by human changes in the world or on the globe, what they call the Anthropocene era. But that's fine. It's not, it's not a critique of anyone. It's an understanding of what's going on. That having been said, you have to have money, and self-determination and money converge, as you say, Prof, and your father did it. He's a living example of self-determination and passed that on to you through an example to see what to do, what not to do, where to make adjustments, where to embrace, and all of that in the culture and the spirit and the ethos of a way of knowing, to use our third conceptual category in our Africana Studies framework. And by the way, if you are subscribed to Knarrative and are in Nubia, Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, we start the second iteration of our Introduction to Africana Studies course. We did a framing conversation last Monday, and we'll go through these conceptual categories. But in that process of passing on that way of knowing, that mouth to ear work, that life to life work, it changes how we look at everything. And when we talk about responses, responding to absurdity, we do have everything we need, but we won't use it for our liberation unless and until we understand culturally, in terms of ways of knowing, cultural meaning making, and most importantly in that, movement and memory, how we move from generation to generation to generation as we move through time and space, our genealogies, what we have done before, and how to use that to regain the momentum of memory so that we can absolutely make the impact we need to make. So they can criticize the vice president about fracking, but understand that you can't win an election without appeasing certain elements. I meant to mention this last week, but I mean, it obviously keeps because we are in the election season now. The vice president has dialed back some of the plans that she has projected toward taxes, lowering, for example, the percentage of the corporate tax rate, high earner tax rate, corporate tax rate at a minimum, taking it back down from her first proposal of 28%, I think back down to 21%, if memory serves me correctly. But that's a political move. I think if left to her own devices, it's pretty clear. She said 28%, like she said she don't want any fracking, and that she embraced the Green New Deal when she was in Senate. But you're running against a moron in an idiocracy, a white man from whom we expect to say they're eating the pets, and nothing happened, because you are a white man, and you're a white man of some paper wealth. Today's Financial Times reporting that we're nearing the date beyond which Donald Trump can sell stock in Truth Social, and he has now said he's released a statement saying he will not be selling any of his stock. Well, good, because it doesn't matter. We know stock is a vibe. I hate to say it that way. Business people have been saying that for years, but at any rate, we know who you're running against, so you got to make certain political adjustments. And then, the commercial news media having sane washed. I love that phrase. I heard Lawrence O'Donnell say that a few days ago, and now I'm hearing it everywhere. So it's my ears and eyes adjusting to something that's been saying. When you have an insane person that you have worked very hard to normalize, you've sane washed him or her. And having sane washed Donald Trump now since 2015, in a political sense, the white commercial news entertainment media complex is now trying to make the adjustment, including the big rusty battleship called the Gray Lady, the New York Times, now trying to walk back some of that sane washing. Well, it doesn't really matter. But I'm saying all that to say that, when we ask the question of how do we deal with absurdity, how do we respond to an absurd environment? How do we respond to a social structure, settler colonial capitalism, racial capitalism, when you are stuck in the system, as the poet, thinker, writer, artist, Fred Moten once wrote in one of his poems, I ran from it and I'm still in it. I ran from it and I was still in it. When you can't escape it, you can't escape that social structure, not completely, then do you try to continue to move away from it to maintain some base of sanity, some base of, or do you confront it head on? The answer is simple. Yes. The answer is both. The answer is both. We do both. And that's how you respond to absurdity. So the Vice President of the United States is running for President of the United States. I'm sure many of us saw my friend Angela Rye on the show with her friend Lenore McKelvey, called The Breakfast Club, in argument and debate or whatever that was. I'm not quite sure, with the president and vice president candidate for the Green Party, Jill Stein and what's his name, Butch Ware. And you know, the back and forth, people on social media picking sides. I'm saying this is absurd. Green Party, you know, and Ralph Nader years ago, people still blaming him for the election of 2000. I don't blame him, not alone. I blame everything from the governor of Florida, Jeb Bush, to the lawyers who went down there to fight for what ended up being a wrong decision by the Supreme Court. John Roberts and Neil Gorsuch being two. No, was it Roberts and Gorsuch? It was Roberts for sure. Or maybe it was Kavanaugh. Beer Kavanaugh was down there, and Amy Coney Barrett too. But yeah, I blame all of them. I blame the people for stop counting. Florida has been a place for a lot of blame over the last couple of generations. Certainly, the Andrew Gillum campaign should not have conceded to the pufferfish governor of Florida. Whatever happened to that ill-fitting suited pufferfish? I forget his name now. Anyway, when he conceded to Andrew DeSantis, instead of forcing them to continue and demanding a recount and this kind of thing, because, you know, I think we're all clear. People went into the ballot box and their intent to vote for Andrew DeSantis exceeded the intent to vote for, Andrew Gillum exceeded the number of people who went in to intend to vote for DeSantis. Now the question becomes, who gets to count the votes? I'm sure you all saw the news yesterday from the Pennsylvania Supreme Court that said that mail-in ballots in Pennsylvania, they ruled yesterday, overturning the ruling of the lower court, that mail-in ballots in Pennsylvania for this election cycle will be rejected if they do not have the right date on them or leave something blank on the mail-in ballots. Check your voter registration, check your voter registration, check your voter registration. But remember, going back to the election of 2020, when the Christian soldier, Sam Alito, sent the message down in the wake of the election, as in Pennsylvania, the White Nationalist Party was attempting to invalidate the votes of voters in places like Philadelphia, primarily in Pittsburgh, trying to invalidate those votes, that Sam Alito in his order said that, you know, we can't rule right now, but sequester those votes that came in later, those mail-in ballots, sequester them, because they were challenging the validity of the mail-in statute in Pennsylvania, the white nationalists were, and Alito sent them the message from the Supreme Court. We can't rule on this now, but set aside those mail-in votes in case we have to revisit this again. In other words, if this is close enough for us to steal, and if Pennsylvania is the state, we'll go back and try to figure out a way to invalidate those votes for you. Well, this isn't 2020. This is 2024. And again, we are coming to the point now where all the enthusiasm could translate into voter registration, could translate into early voting, encourage everybody to early vote. Early voting in Pennsylvania starts next week. Early voting in Georgia starts October the 15th. So go and early vote, bank those votes, bank those votes, bank those votes. But remember that the Christian soldier, Sam Alito, sent that message to Pennsylvania in the order that said, we can't look at this now, but set aside those votes in case we need to revisit it again. In other words, if we get it close enough to steal, perhaps we'll go in now and make sure you don't count those votes. So votes eventually counted. Of course, Biden won the election. Of course, Georgia and Pennsylvania played the key roles in that. So it didn't get close enough for them to steal. 4 years later, it is close enough for them to steal. And unlike 2020, they have replaced many election judges in these states, particularly behind the Cotton Curtain in the Confederacy. They have installed a number of election watchers and poll watchers, and the billionaires, the Ed Blooms of the world, and the what's that punk that got rid of the president of Harvard, Bill Ackmans of the world, who engaged in some racist, sexist tripe on his friend Elon Musk's delivery system, Twitter. They are lining up to steal the election. So you can go in with your intent to vote, but they are saying, okay, we can't stop it on the front end, but we've got people in behind at the back end to try to stop this. What do you do when you confront absurdity? You meet it full on in that case. You don't try to withdraw. You don't set back. So watching Angela Rye and Jill Stein on The Breakfast Club, that was an attempt to confront by Angela Rye, Jill Stein. And that's not to say that the Green Party doesn't have some very important critiques and very important analysis of this duopoly we live in. They absolutely do. But the question is, what are you doing between the presidential election cycles? And all my friends who say we must vote third party, I don't disagree with you, except when it comes to understanding what a third party does, friends. Third party doesn't disappear until federal elections and then announce presidential candidates every 4 years. And when the response to that is, no, we're working in between, we're organizing. Okay, show me, because I'm in the streets every day, friends. And third party politics is something I'm very familiar with, having participated in them. And y'all remember the name Lenora Fulani, the black woman out of New York who ran for president. This is back in the day when Phil Donahue was riding high. Donahue had Lenora Fulani on his show in the 1980s. Some of y'all probably remember that. But you also remember NB, National Black Independent Political Party. You remember the 1972 Gary Convention. So as someone who wasn't there in 1972, I was 7 years old, but who is well familiar with many people who were, who is well familiar with the National Black Independent Party and well familiar and conversant and sitting with and listening to and being in debate and argument and discussion and ultimately consensus building with people, everybody from Manning Marable to Ron Walters, to Amiri Baraka, to Jesse Jackson. Oh, let's be clear, friends. I know what a third party does. You read Ron Walters' book, Black Presidential Politics in America, you understand that party building isn't just about winning elections, it's about building power. And that 1972 convention in Gary, followed by the one following year in Little Rock, and you can read about this in all kind of books. You can read The Defeat of Black Power, or you can go back to the primary documents. You can go back to Black World and Negro Digest and trace those Black political conventions in Gary and the one in Little Rock. You can see that you can come up with a 10-point plan for saying these are the 10 things we think the Black community needs. We've workshopped them. We've agreed to agree on them, in the words of Marie Kelsey, and now we're presenting them to the Black community on a little card. And you talk to any candidate, independent, Democrat, Progressive Party, Green Party, Blue Party, the After Party, and if depending on where they come down on that 10. Think of it almost like a pre-Alan Lichtman version of Lichtman's 13 Keys. You come down through, and whoever's got the most, that's who we vote for. We ignore the D or the R, or the I, or the G, or the People's Party, the Progressive Party, or whatever. See, political parties don't translate into mechanisms for getting people elected until election time. And when they do, that's state, local, and federal, and in whatever configuration that your votes get emptied into. So when Angela Rye and Jill Stein are debating, are you talking past each other? Because Jill Stein is speaking like an ideologically pure person. And hey, I understand. Angela Rye is speaking like a person who is talking about two-party duopoly electoral politics. Hey, I understand. But we have to be clear about our point of departure. Otherwise, we just talking. And then, of course, on social media, the amplification of weaponized ignorance creates what is necessary for the fascists to prevail. And that is chaos. Donald John Trump won the debate in his mind, but not only in his mind, he won the debate by changing the conversation. Do you know who, if an election poll was taken today, would be leading by an overwhelming majority? Cats and dogs would be the presidents of the United States of America. If you poll general people and say, what is the one thing in the debate between Harris and Trump that is indelibly in your mind, and based on that answer, that will be the president. Oh, it's going to be cats and dogs. Meow. Not even moo and oink. We done moved past moo and oink. We now at meow and bark. In fact, not even meow and bark, but the ghost of meow and bark, because those pets have been consumed. And Donald Trump, understanding, crazy, in this instance, like a fox, changed the conversation. We laugh our way all the way, having belly laughed and then missed and woke up from laughter on November the 6th to realize that, damn, I didn't vote, but I'm in a safe state. Are you? This is why I asked you, Prof, about Taylor Swift and the impact, because, you know, they've got the polls, the phone polls, the internet polls, and we all know the polls miss significant numbers of people. I read something and I could not find it in the hour before we turned on here, but I will find it between now and office hours.
I want to say this.
Yeah, please jump in.
I think her endorsement is going to have a significant impact. There are a lot of 20-something-year-olds, and it was the same thing that happened with Barack Obama that blindsided Hillary Clinton, because they had that institutional political machine that, you know, with bills and everything, and they thought that, you know, and he should wait his turn, and they were going to steamroll over him. But he did say he tapped into something that Hillary Clinton wasn't able to do then or in 2016. Young people. That's the deciding factor. And like it or not, Taylor Swift, I teached it at Hunter College for 20-something years. And it was always 18, 19, 20-year-olds. They love K-pop. They love Taylor. Black, Hispanic, Filipino, Chinese. It's universal. She's universally loved. They're black people that will fight you over Tay-Tay. Okay.
Oh, no question.
So,
no question.
But she really touches young people. To hear Harris Faulkner complain about her Bella, you know, I bought tickets to Taylor Swift because my Bella loves Taylor Swift. Inside the house.
In the house.
Inside your house, you got enemies that will go and show up and because Taylor said that. You know, we already know about what's her name? The woman that has her feet up on the couch that runs with Trump, but her husband Kellyanne Conway. Claudia ain't voting for Trump, you know. And throughout this country, just the way, and I'm going to liken it to this, just the way some folk pushed hip hop and rap into the suburbs. And it had an impact. Generations later, we're seeing a fallout because it's consumed primarily by white boys in the suburb who now have this view of blackness that has been penetrating their soul for the better part of 50 years. Tay-Tay has a similar impact on young white girls. There's a whole generation of college-age white girls who will be inspired. The fact that vote.org almost got shut down in one day with people going on to register.
How about that?
Who's registering at this point, Dr. Carr? Undecided people. We had 100 million people that didn't show up in 2016, right? 2020, 100 million. More people sat out than sat in, right?
That's right.
So if we are having an influx of people registering, I believe the undecided people, the people that would never vote or show up, are just tired of the negativity and the back and forth and the confusion and the misinformation. They just are tired.
Yes.
And now they might be inspired.
They might be.
So, I mean, I think it's going to be significant, but we'll see. Because again, the 53% of white women that keep showing up for against their own everything. And the poor white folk in the different spaces like where JD Vance and them are from, y'all keep voting against your interests. But that number, at some point, people are going to be like, this doesn't make it. I don't have teeth.
Right.
Look, they're fighting. Her tax cuts. You making 100 million? I'm not.
I'm not.
You making 100 million? Why are you worried about 100 millionaires who could pay their taxes? But her tax breaks are gonna hurt you ain't gonna be 100 millionaire. I'm not even planning on it.
Exactly.
So, and if I am 100 millionaire, I'm gladly paying taxes because guess what? I'm okay.
I'm okay. And yeah. In fact, Dick Cheney, Lynn Cheney,
Adam Kinzinger,
but there was somebody who was particularly frightening, should be frightening to all humans who walk the earth, who endorsed her, who was from that cabal, that group. George Bush probably doesn't even know what day it is. People saying George Bush didn't endorse. George Bush can't spell endorse, but and his minders have been, but it was somebody else. It wasn't Cheney, who was the most egregious until this person.
Stephanie Grisham, Trump's
Now, it
wife?
wasn't Grisham. It was somebody who held office, maybe a cabinet officer. Anyway, my point is this: none of those people mean you well. So when Dick Cheney comes out, a pure warmonger with an endorsement.
Alberto Gonzalez.
Yes, it was Gonzalez.
Okay.
Gonzalez, thank you.
Bush's attorney general.
Bush's lock them all up, execute people, put people in Guantanamo for the rest of their lives, bomb everybody, take all the rights, citizenship. What is that? Gonzalez, the attorney general. That's exactly right. He endorsed Kamala Harris. That should tell you right now, and this is for all my friends who say it's a duopoly and both parties are the same. You're absolutely right. And with that having been said, you've also revealed through your decision to sit on the couch that you don't give a damn about your grandmother's insulin. And I understand you want to throw Granny in the road. But anyway, go ahead. Please.
We had Dr. Gerard McClendon, who calls. He's part of our family in Urban View, and I'm sure he'll call. I'm sure he's called in the mornings. He made an astute. He said, "Listen, rodents. We know rodents, right? Squirrels are rodents, right?
Yeah.
They're the same. Both parties the same." He said, "So you look out your door, you see 5 squirrels on your lawn, you don't have a problem, right? You look out your door and you see 5 rats,
right?
There's a difference.
They're
difference. Both rodents."
That's right.
Okay, so yes, they're the same, but they're not the same.
But
when you made that analogy, I was like, that's perfect, because if I see 1 rat, we got a problem.
Because we've been socialized to see. And see, that's the challenge. To me, that analogy moves in the direction of perception. And that's what makes me worry about something like that, because I remember at 5 or 6 years old, standing in Phoenix City, Alabama with my daddy, my Uncle Aaron, my Uncle Doc, and a bunch of other grown men. And we just standing there, me and my brother, and I watched my Uncle Doc skin a squirrel to eat, to put in the pot. So not a cat, not a dog, but a squirrel. And a Vietnam dog can be eaten. You know what I'm saying? I mean, so it's all about perception. We react to rats that way because not only are they disease carriers and everything else, but we've been socialized to say, oh, rats. And I'm saying, like Malcolm's analogy of the fox and the wolf, they're the same. But here's the challenge. When you then say, as you say, why have we been socialized to think of that way about rats? Rats will bite you. Rats carry diseases. Squirrels don't typically come in your house and have nests. In other words, there are reasons behind the perception. Those parties aren't the same, and there are reasons behind the perception. Behind the perception, everything from healthcare, people are saying, well, she's saying they're gonna get $25,000 to first-time home buyers, but the provision is you have to have good credit, and so therefore, okay, so what if you have good credit? And what if you have that provision, and with a Democratic Congress and Senate that you've put past the need to have a 60-vote filibuster-proof majority because Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema were hiding. Who's hiding behind them? John Tester, maybe, if he wins re-election. In other words, you're going to need more people than just Sinema and Manchin, because now what you're about to find out is the people who are hiding behind Sinema and Manchin. Nobody said this was going to be easy, but let's say there is a credit requirement for the $25,000 down payment. Let's say that you get enough elected officials so that you can take that out. The credit.
Can't you work on your credit now? What is credit? Bring the bills on time. Like you got time to get your credit together. Like that's abdicating your power to somebody else. Can you get good credit?
That's right.
Credit's not based on race and racism, even though we can have that discussion at another time. But
yeah,
you know, somebody who has worked on her credit.
Yes.
And let me tell you, the entree with credit into all kinds of things, having an 800 credit score gives you access to a whole lot of things. Why wouldn't you want to work?
Why would you want to do it? Right. And now, of course, I need to read the deeper dive into policy. There was a whole contretemps on social media last week. Jericka Purnell was the person I saw who was saying, I went on the Harris website and I didn't see the policies. Then they apparently posted the policies in more detail, and she said, oh, all of a sudden this is all it took. Great work, Sister Jericka, you know, to push to make sure they made that adjustment, but don't mistake that for the idea they didn't have it. And also those who are saying that she's flip-flopping, you're first of all, you're borrowing language from your master, again, you're using a narrative that has been imposed. And if it's a 180-degree policy shift, if people say she turned 360 degrees, then that means she continued in the same direction. It's if it's 180 reversal, it's a 180-degree reversal. That's what politicians do, friends. And so the idea, as you say, I mean, people are saying, and again, I haven't read it, and I hate to use one of Donald Trump's favorite terms, people are saying, but I need to read it for myself to understand, first of all, whether or not that's accurate, whether or not there's a credit requirements. And as you said, people can work on their credit. Second of all, what I read alluded to the idea, I won't say the fact because I'm ready for myself, that the good credit requirement extends to never having had bad credit, which I find hard to believe. Again, I want to verify. But the point you're raising is the point. Work on your credit. We live in a capitalist society. Work on your credit. We all have to do it. We all have to, I'm a one person operation. I need people. People say to me all the time, you say that, Rob, you need people. I know. I need to get an accountant. I finally now, thanks to you, shout out to Lou Hutt, got somebody who can work on the finances, make sure, hey, I believe in contributing to the society I live in for resources because my mother and father lived on Social Security. Neither one of them made much money in their lives. And that federal pension was the difference between them and before we got to the age where we could earn enough to send back. Not even send back, to send to. Back implies you somehow going past your parent. No, but that was and remained a lifesaver and is for a lot of people. Your friends in the white nationalist party will privatize Social Security on the way to bankrupting and making sure that so many are in pure poverty. They are also anti-union and all many other things. There's a difference. You're absolutely right, Prof. There's a difference between squirrels and rats. Same family, but not the same. And there are substantive reasons behind that perception. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a problem. So thank you for making that analogy. It's very important for evoking it. So in that process, as I was saying, I mean, as we are talking here, we're dealing with a real politic moment. And how do you respond to absurdity? Because absurdity is what we have lived with since we've been drawn into the modern world system, and certainly the settler colonial criminal enterprise called United States of America, and certainly the form of human trafficking that brought us here. And listening to people talk about that, one person I was, I'll get to that in a minute. I'm going to mention some other things that have happened. I'm glad you opened with the ancestor, Tina McElroy Ansa, because that gives us a beautiful baseline and have an ancestral point of entry to talk about some more ancestors. We're thinking about you all week with We Are One. Howard University is playing Morehouse College in New York at the New York Classic this afternoon. And I asked the Howard students what they had in their repertoire, because every HBCU band in the Deep South has Before I Let Go in their repertoire. So you're going to hear so much Frankie Beverly over the next 2 months of HBCU college football. And, the members of the band who are in my class, the Showtime Marching Band, said, well, Dr. Carr, we have Howard is One. I said, that's right. They have a version of We Are One, which of course is one of your theme songs. And Frankie Beverly, in an interview he gave to Roland Martin on TV One, the Roland's been running all week, not all week, since we heard about Frankie Beverly's passing. Frankie Beverly said, Roland asked him, what's your favorite song? He said, I have different ones, but We Are One is one of my, I say, yeah, that's Karen's song. So, to all you all, I expect the Ocean of Soul at Texas Southern, the Human Jukebox at Southern University. I expect the Sonic Boom of the South at Jackson State, or the Aristocrat of Bands at Tennessee State. I imagine that some of those young student arrangers and writers are scurrying now to incorporate more Frankie Beverly to be alongside Before I Let Go. And We Are One would be good. But at any rate, this week has been a heavy week. I mean, yes, the debate, can believe it was only Tuesday. Today, September 14th, 1963. We had, of course, the murders of Cynthia Denise McNair, Addie Mae Collins, Cynthia Wesley, Johnny Robinson, Virgil Ware. We had the murder of Carolina Robeson. Those 6 children, 4 girls blown up at 16th Street Baptist Church, 2 boys shot in the streets of Birmingham later by crackers celebrating the death of the 4 girls. And some of them may still walk the earth, because the little boy that shot Virgil Ware was young. Shot little Virgil Ware as he was on the handlebars of his brother's bike as they had finished delivering the Sunday paper in Birmingham. And if he is dead, he's burning in hell, if there is a hell. but this is the 61st anniversary. If you go back to our archive, as you remember, Prof, and all the folks in Nubia remember, and we have our extensive archive, and a four-letter word has been very pregnant in my mind all week, for a long time, much longer than a week, months, years, but really this week heavy because it was so rapid fire. Leaving here 5 in the morning, many mornings, 6 in the morning, some mornings, but never later than 6. Getting back most nights after midnight. Grateful, tired, but grateful because my daddy went to work every day of his life. So that ain't nothing compared to what my father, your father did and showed us. Grateful for that, and thinking that four-letter word that just stays in my mind these days is time, T-I-M-E, time. Time, needing time to reflect. You go into our archive, we did an extensive dive, a deep dive into the events at Birmingham. Sarah Collins, the sister of Addie Mae Collins, of course, published her book a couple of years ago with a brother who was at Wayne State University at the time called The Fifth Little Girl. I think that book is in storage now. I moved that book to storage as well. We talked about Daoud Bey and the Birmingham Project. I know that book is in storage, which I'm bitter about because I was looking for it last night because I wanted to talk about it today. But today is the 61st anniversary of the killing of those children in Birmingham, Alabama. And, how do we respond to absurdity? We talked a lot about the ministers of Birmingham, and, I showed you a couple of memoirs and all of that, though. If you go back to session 184, we talked about those things. And so, having that archive now requires us to have the time to go into it. We've all poured a great deal over the arc of these years into this sacred space, and we built it collectively. And in building it collectively, we have given birth to initiatives. We've strengthened other initiatives. By the way, I was talking with Aya Fubara Anelli. She and her family, they're all still in, most of them, I think, at this point, are still in Opobo. They spent some time in Opobo town with the library. Aya came in office hours on Monday night and talked about it. They're having a meeting on Zoom on Tuesday. I'll put the information in the chat in Nubia. They're having a meeting on Tuesday to support the library and the teachers there. How unbelievable is it that $50 to a school teacher for, I think, a monthly salary would put them in the top 1% of earners in Opobo town? That is stunning to hear. But people, again, this space has been a space where we've been able, through supporting these efforts, and to hear you talk about how Brother Rod helped keep this sister in business, who is enabling other people at a moment when we heard this week, of course, that the Fearless Fund settled with the white nationalists funded by Ed Bloom and others who have attacked them because they've given out money to Black women. So they're not just about affirmative action. If you all been reading the news, Harvard released their numbers. I was in class, Education in Black America, yesterday, and I read them the numbers. I think they were released either Wednesday night or Thursday morning, because I had them by the time for class yesterday, my 9:40 class. Their number of Black students in their first year class dropped from 18% to 14%. The number of Asian students rose. We saw that at Tufts, the University of Virginia. We saw that at Berkeley. We're seeing it all over the country. Of course, it isn't about the Asian students for the white nationalists. It's about the legacy white students and other miserable other children coming into college who, what's really what they're after. But the point is this: in this work, we have what we need to support ourselves. The numbers of applications to historically Black colleges have skyrocketed. As we heard, Baba Mutosho, Dan Black, came in and in office hours on Monday night, last Monday, in Nubia, and told us about the explosion of applications at Clark, Atlanta University. No doubt, in no small measure, to his incandescent commencement speech last May. They're not like us. Shout out to Kendrick Lamar. We'll come back to Kendrick in a moment, who's performing at the Super Bowl, which may have led to his angst-ridden release on Wednesday night of his new song, which we'll talk about in a minute. Brilliant song, again, but, you know, very reflective. I mean, thanks to Brother Marlon Ashby. Thank you, brother, in his first year of law school down there in Texas, but who came into Nubia one night and said, man, you should reconsider Kendrick. And I said, let me listen again and again and again and again. And so between he and Valethia Watkins, who's a Kendrick fan, I just continue to listen, and I continue to deepen my appreciation for the brother, even as I will say that all cultural meaning making reflects the time and space in which it is made. That's why that category in our Africana Studies framework is different than movement and memory, which tracks how we remember things across time and space. And so still not quite ready. And that's no reflection on Kendrick Lamar or any contemporary cultural meaning maker, but a reflection on the times in which we live and the context out of which people make their art, make their meaning, make their cultural meaning. Still not quite ready to elevate Kendrick to the pantheon. Pantheon, let me take that back. I shouldn't use that Greek word. Elevate them to the top tier of ancestral cultural meaning makers, but that's not Kendrick. That's the times and spaces. I think there was a lot more to work with when Amiri Baraka and Sonia Sanchez were the age of Kendrick Lamar. I think there was a lot more to work with, perhaps, when Claude McKay is writing If We Must Die. I think there was a lot more to work with for Paul Robeson's era than it was for James Earl Jones, who played Paul Robeson's era. Going to come to James Jones in a minute, but we are in the 61st anniversary day of the murder of those children in Birmingham, Alabama, here in the United States, where we're sitting in this global conversation we call In Class every week. And you can go to look at session 184 for a deeper dive in it, but the question becomes raised again in the context of this anniversary day: how do we deal with absurdity? Because that was absurd. How do we grapple with absurdity? How do we grapple with a concept of nation, a concept of country, a concept in a social structure that arguably traps us forever in the trap of race? You know, this is a week in which racist whitelash to the first and probably only, let me not say probably, because we can't predict. Donald Trump now has doubled down, quadrupled down, infinityed down on the winning strategy. See, I don't think we should conflate winning and losing strategies. The losing strategy is to appear sane. The winning strategy is insanity, coming down a golden elevator, saying that all the Mexicans are bringing crime, rapists, and drugs, you know, saying that they're very fine people on both sides. And Charlottesville, bringing those things up doesn't hurt Trump. It helps him. Yes, I know there are a handful of people who we pray for and hope that there's better medical care for, to help them achieve a form of mental acuity that will rescue them from this vague and really undefinable category called undecided voter. We understand that, you know, we pray for those people because clearly there's something mentally challenging that they have to get over to be able to tell the difference between things like wet and dry, hot and cold, day and night, and Trump and Harris. But in that process, I need to know more about her. Okay, she can speak, she laughs, she's coherent. What else do you need to know? Because that dude over there, if his family cared about him, and it's pretty clear they don't, they would put a blanket over his shoulders and say, pop, pop, it's time to go. But that's not going to happen because Donald Trump understands this isn't about logic. As John Clark would say, at those moments in U.S. history when it has been the most dangerous for us, blood calls blood. And somehow, John Clark used to always say, blood always answers. You remember, friends, that there's another anniversary today. On the 14th of September, 1874, 1,500 members of the White League, which is a militia of Confederate veterans who were opposed to Reconstruction, fomented a coup d'etat in New Orleans against the interracial government of the city and temporarily took over the city until Ulysses S. Grant sent in the federal troops to put down the rebellion. And up until Mitch Landrieu, the mayor of New Orleans in 2017, in response to overwhelming public complaint, took down the monument marking that riot of September the 14th, 1874. That riot was commemorated. The white militia coup d'etat. They killed some of the white and black police in an interracial police force that day. And the great grandchildren of those hillbillies are in the streets now. Donald Trump won the debate. Why? Because all he got to do is stand up. And it doesn't matter whether he's repeating fool talking points that never happened. Shout out to John Legend and everybody else from Springfield, Ohio, the mayor of Springfield, Ohio, and everybody else who is saying, leave the Haitians alone. Shout out to the people, even the black-faced nativists, the American descendants of slaves. And I know it's slavery, but I'm making a point here, who are saying whatever our nativist clinging is to, you can't do that to black people. Speaking to our Haitian kin. Then you got to be a Pan-Africanist to understand that what is being understood now as Haitians are afraid to let their children go to school for fear of these white nationalists who have already engaged in violence in Springfield, Ohio, and are sending out the response to the call Donald Trump made in that debate with Joe Biden the first time. Stand back and stand by. That Kamala Harris brought up on Tuesday. Stand back and stand by. And people say, she hit him. No, you don't understand. That is a call that you only have to make once. And once you got that signal, what is the difference between the parties? If she wins and if he wins, they're both the same. Really? If he wins, watch the emboldenment. You ready to fight these white boys when they bust up and roll up on you in the Piggly Wiggly in Tuskegee, or the Giant in Silver Spring, Maryland? You ready to bust up on them when they bust them in the face when they roll up on you in the Kroger's in Nashville or Cincinnati, Ohio? You ready to bust up on them when they bust up on you in the Safeway in Baltimore? Are you ready? You're not ready. You're not as ready as your ancestors were. Because when them same white boys the year before in Colfax, Louisiana showed up, and when them same white boys showed up in the case that became known as Cruikshank in Louisiana to steal the ballot box, at least the brothers and sisters had the long rifles and the pistols to meet them and say, let's dance. But you ain't even got the strap. Some of y'all found out Tuesday night that Kamala got the strap. And you said, that's great. You know how many people got the strap who also pulled the lever for the D or the G or the I or the R? The strap don't know Democrat or Republican, but the propaganda has convinced you that it does. And Donald Trump in the White House sends out the clarion call. Now it ain't just the hillbilly horde that overran the Capitol on January the 6th, 2001. Now it's everybody in the country who ever felt the inclination to use the N-word and pass it on to their child, who is now going to sit in the kindergarten and say, Donald Trump is president, nigga. Let me slap your face. And when a little black girl beats this little white girl up and gets suspended from school, the parties are the same. You don't understand the implications of a social structure in which a whole white nationalist, who is now doubling down on a vote for me, is a vote for open fascism and white nationalism, has now identified as his best chance. So I said one, maybe no more debates, but I'm not so sure, because every passing day brings a clear vision. As I watched the Vice President of the United States in North Carolina twice on Thursday, as I've seen her now traveling Pennsylvania back and forth, the big rally in Pennsylvania the night after, in Philly right after the debate. And I was there when they opened that building that they had the debate in. Remember, I told y'all about that. That's when they had all the Supreme Court justices there, and they had a big bunting in the front of the building, right there across from the old Pennsylvania State House, we call Pennsylvania Hall, Independence Hall. And they yanked the cord to bring the cord down. And instead of the cord coming down, the whole wooden framework started rocking. And we was all sitting there like, if that framework rocked, you would have had at least 5 open seats on the Supreme Court. But at any rate, so I was there the day when I was standing outside it, the day that Barack Obama was in that same building, the Constitutional Center, and threw Jeremiah Wright under the bus. That's right, Rev. I hope you're here this morning, Rev, because I ain't never forgiven the Chocolate Wonder for that. And I was standing there outside the debate. So I'm saying that space, she left that space and went to the rally with the momentum. Donald Trump meandering around in the green room, his little friend, Pee Wee German, Stephen Miller, losing his mind. You know what I'm saying? Pee Wee German. I see that all over social media. That's a good nickname. Pee Wee German, little Himmler, little Goebbels, the propagandist, losing his mind. One Venezuelan journalist confronted Stephen Miller. Why are you saying that all the crime rate is down in Caracas because all the criminals were sent here? What's your information? Is it the dictator Maduro? You can argue about Maduro pro or con, the president of Venezuela. But one thing you couldn't argue with is when this reporter asked him where you getting them number from, he just whatever. And then of course a sister whose people are of Haitian descent, an African who is now, I think, on PBS, Yamiche Alcindor, who confronts Stephen Miller with this cats and dogs business. No, it wasn't Steve Miller, it was JV Vance, Junior Varsity Vance, asking him, and you know, I mean, whatever you can think or not think about Yamiche Alcindor's journalistic skills, at that moment, I'm listening to her like, yeah, you are Haitian right now. We are all Haitians, friends. We were all Haitians from the beginning. Go back through our archive as we talked about the Haitian Revolution. Look at what's going on in Haiti right now. Coney, the prime minister of Haiti, was in town, D.C. this week, Congressional Black Caucus week, and making the rounds. And of course, we know he's a wholly owned subsidiary of the United States and Canada and France, but we also know that the Haitian people will be free, as Randall Robeson wrote in his book. That continued agony in Haiti is responded to. How do you respond to absurdity? You confront it head on, and the Haitians will overcome this. But at that moment, Yamiche Alcindor, Haitian, just like the press secretary in the White House briefing room, standing there, listening to these white boys try to raise this dog and cat eating mess, say that's and then somebody starts smiling. She looked and said, she Haitian too. But guess what? We're all Haitian. So even the nativists now embracing the Haitians in a moment, but don't mistake that absurdity for what it isn't. It isn't an attempt to calibrate. It's full on primal bleat, as you say, Prof, the dying bleat of a dying way of life. But it ain't dead yet, as you say. It is wounded, which means it's at its most dangerous. And Donald Trump has now turned to embrace the thing that put him in the office in the first place. Purebred white supremacy. So on this week of the Harris-Trump debate, on this week of the 53rd Annual Congressional Black Caucus Legislative Conference, we have to think about these strategies. How do we pursue our justice claims? How do we build a vastly improved society in the current social structure we have, not the one we wish we had? To combine two things that don't go together, but we're going to put them together now because it's so deliciously ironic. The former Secretary of Defense, Donald Rumsfeld, and the current candidate for the Green Party nomination for President of the United States, Jill Stein. Sister Stein, in the words of Donald Rumsfeld, channeled in a different way, but not by quoting, but feeling in the same sentiment, by Angela Rye. You go to war with the army you have, not the army you wish you had. You don't have an army, Jill Stein. There's an army in the Democratic Party. And no, we don't like everybody in the army. And no, we don't like the use of some of them tactical weapons. And no, we don't like the targets all the time. Although, unlike the killers of the Israeli Defense Force, who this week blew up some UN human rights workers at a place that had been identified, at a school that had been identified as a shelter. Bibi doesn't want a ceasefire. He wants his friend Donald Trump back, at which point he's going to declare a ceasefire after he finished killing as many people as he can, so his friend Jared Kushner, who with $2 billion from the damn Saudi sovereign fund, can put up condos. Both parties are the same. Every time you say that, you've put your brain on display. And we're not going to waste time with a distraction, whether it be Donald Trump eating cats and dogs or you talking about both parties are the same. At this point, how do we respond to absurdity? We have to confront it head on. But at that moment, Karine Jean-Pierre is Haitian. We all Haitians. We all black, because today is Haitians eating cats and dogs, and today is you too, black, who can trace every ancestor you ever had back to a slavery that never existed 50 billion years ago. Now run me my check. You're not getting a check. And the deeper question is, why do you need a check to validate your own work? Because confronting things head on doesn't mean you also don't move away. Repair, part of it is internal. I'll come to that in a minute. Shout out to all my students at Howard Law School. Every semester I have these brilliant students, and this semester's no exception. We are halfway through Catherine Frankie's book, Repair, on reparations. We just read about that same South Carolina that Tina McElroy Ansa defended so beautifully. The same one you're talking about, Prof. This South Carolina of the Sea Islands, and we talked about that a lot this week, and I want to talk more about that in a moment. But I want to just a few more things and then get to that. This absurdity. This confronting this absurd social structure requires us to be vigilant and not to deal with distractions, except to keep them on the periphery. Like Donald Trump talking about, they're eating the pets. Okay, they can eat the pets, they can eat the paint, they can eat the poo-poo, whatever, eat it. But you eat it over there, because we are steamrolling ahead. Check your voter registration, check it, check your voter registration. Make sure you haven't been thrown off the rolls. Make sure that if you're doing a mail-in ballot, every T is crossed, every I is dotted. Make sure if you're going to vote early, vote as early as you can. Bank the votes. If you can, do it as much as possible to render the 5th of November 2024 irrelevant. And for those of you who cannot avoid doing it, or through ritual practice, like normally is my practice, having grown up like you did, Prof, and so many of the rest of us, going in the booth with our parents, who like to, as we call it in the South, vote on the day. I vote on the day. 4-letter word, I vote on the day. It's a beautiful thing to see. Oh, if you think, as I've told this story many times, so I won't repeat it here except in an abbreviated fashion. If you think like I had that experience in front of Lee Elementary School in West Philly, 4 day in the morning before I voted, immediately at 7, and then got on the train and came down to DC, who ended that day with the Howard students commingling with everybody else on Georgia Avenue and marching to the White House to tell George Bush to get out because Obama had won the election. As I had that experience at 4:30 a.m., getting in line, thinking the line was going to be lost, let me hurry up. And as I got the experience of seeing 2 elderly black women sitting in lawn chairs who were already in line when I came up in the middle of the hood in West Philly at 4:30 in the morning on election day, 2008. It's going to be a repeat of that, except it's going to be completely off the chain, because unlike 2008, there's no TikTok then, no Instagram. The gram is not there. YouTube is not there. And now I ask about Taylor Swift. I can't find it. I'll find that article. If none of y'all find it in either of the chats, YouTube or Knarrative in Nubia, put that article in the chat for us, and I'll find it between now and Monday. We can talk about it a little bit before we get into the class on Monday night. That was talking about measuring the Taylor Swift endorsement, the power, the potential of it, and saying that this is a reflection. This is a potential reflection of the difference between polling that we know, phone call polling, internet polling, and sampling data from the emerging science and technology, another one of our conceptual categories, emerging science and technology that should scare the hell out of all of us, but yet in this case is beginning to reveal something very different, which is artificial intelligence, which has been curating not only the number of times vote.gov, vote.com have been accessed, to the number of, and go through your Secretary of State office at the state level, because voting, checking your voter registration and then registering to vote, 2 different things. So you got to go to the state to make sure you got everything in place, and then you confirm it and double check it and check it again next week and check it again every week. Well, this AI is beginning to source since Tuesday, the potential reach of this endorsement. And through filtering through AI, through gathering data in terms of everything from Google searches to checking the voter registration websites, and apparently the number has soared past 400,000 in Florida alone.
Is this the New York Times article?
It might be. Did they have it broken down by state? Is there a graphic, Prof?
Hold on.
Check and see, because there was I want to say it was the time, maybe, but it was a hot link, because they were talking about the 405,000 visits, almost 406,000 to vote.gov through the link, and all of the numbers there. But this AI said that it is an alternative to the voice poll. So not calling people, it's an alternative to the internet poll, filling out a survey there, responding to a survey there. And it dwarfs the numbers. They said these voice polls and these internet polls may capture 5,000 voters in this, or 15,000 voters. This one is capturing data from millions of voters. And they're saying that, pursuant to what you said earlier, the impact generationally of the uses of this technology might be a better predictor of the impact of this endorsement. And so I don't know. I mean, so yes, thinking about this, and I want to kind of wind up.
Reuters has one too. It has a map with all of the, yeah.
Okay, and you can see the states, and like the numbers are huge. 400,000 here, 70,000 here. It's like you see, by state, and you can see kind of like the potential reach. Now we don't know. Obviously, an endorsement is not a vote, and a vote isn't banked until it's counted. You got to vote, and then you got to count the vote. Again, we have to be vigilant. But this question of how we respond to this absurdity, which in many ways is the foundation of Black American identity. There is no Black American identity without the absurdity. There's no Black, period, without the absurdity. How do you think, work, organize, fight your way out of an absurd situation. You got to confront it head on. And that's, of course, Monday night. We'll be returning to that with our Introduction to Africana Studies course. With the article, by the way, I published in this new edition of a journal called the W.E.B. Du Bois Journal. The editor-in-chief, Shanice Thompson, has since moved from Bowie State University to Howard University. Very proud of Shanice Thompson. She's taking it by storm, her alma mater, my Philadelphia protege. But the article we'll be reading for Monday night is an article I wrote this summer for Shanice on that question of a freedom course design. And the article ends with Nubia. It ends with jailbreaking the university. So that's where we're going to start this week for our first round of discussions around the first conceptual category, social structure. I'm very excited about that. That question of self-determination. Of course, we saw this week the transition to eternity of James Earl Jones. Very interesting figure. And of course, people have been circulating clips of James Earl Jones's comments on white women. You see him sitting there, and black women. You see him sitting there next to the woman who his wife became his wife. He married twice, and the white woman who survives him. And he's talking about black women, and then she chimes in on black women having it hard, and she can understand why they could be a little rough. And I'm like, you have an opinion, and you're sharing it with a black man sitting there in front of people. How fascinating is this? But understanding, wow. Okay, James. So that's the kind of thing you enable when you do things like that. But
James, I wonder.
Yeah, come on in.
I watched that clip. I never shared it.
Yeah,
I'm very cautious about what I share because I don't want to reinforce.
Yes, ma'am.
Thoughts that we already have. But I wonder if he had the same view at 70, at 80, at 90. Like no one. I don't feel like anyone asked him about that.
Well, that's why you know me, Prof. He did a couple of books years after that. The best known book, here it is. This wasn't in storage. This is James Earl Jones, Voices and Silences. James Earl Jones, a fascinating character. So I think a partial answer to your question can be found in these pages. It's funny, and I don't think he would mind. If he does, I'm gonna get an earful, and that's gonna be kind of because I love this brother. Holly Garima knew James Earl Jones, encountered James Earl Jones. And I suspect that James Earl Jones, the attitude he had in that early clip isn't far off, maybe with some adjustments toward what he might say about black women as an elder. But in terms of his openness beyond race, I don't think that would necessarily be different now. Certainly, chapter 18 in this book is entitled Grendel. Y'all know Grendel if you know Beowulf, right? It starts with a quote from Zora Neale Hurston, who says, "At certain times, I have no race. I am me." And the last quote, John Gardner, Grendel, which of course is, Beowulf from Grendel's point. "Brute existence, are a dime a dozen." This is what James Jones says. He says, in John Gardner's novel Grendel, we see mythological figures acting out a universal drama, the ultimate witch hunt. There's a cave. Inside the cave, Grendel, the monster, lives in hibernation with his family. Many of y'all noticed you had to read Grendel. There's also a dragon. Didn't have to read Things Fall Apart at Chebe. Didn't have to read Bessie Head. Didn't have to read Ngugi wa Thiong'o or Chino, but you had to read Grendel. Outside the cave are the Norse people, barely evolved above cavemen themselves, enduring harsh and precarious lives. And there is Beowulf, who was to become the matador to Grendel's bull. As the story begins, Grendel goes outside. He doesn't know he's a monster. He's just a being. When he gets outside, the people outside, including Beowulf, say, "Oh, it's a monster." And they use that monster in part to create their own identity. When he gets outside that cave, he realizes that he's Kamala Harris. Because the people have created, oh, that's the monster. When he gets outside that cave, he realizes he's Tyreek Hill. The people have created a monster. When he comes outside, he realizes he's been eating cats and dogs, imaginary cats and dogs, because he's Haitian. I don't think Tyreek Hill's people are from Haiti, but it doesn't matter. Blackness, the absurdity of blackness is what's marked. James Earl Jones writes about race most directly in his memoir in chapter 18, Grendel, because he says this. He says, powerful mythologies can be embodied in one image. The heroes and monsters of a time are rooted in its mythology. James Earl Jones says, and this book is still years before he made transition. This memoir was published in, I want to say 19. Hold on, let me remember. Voices and Silences, 1990. It was in the 90s. We'll see the copyright dating here right now. Actually, yeah, because it ends his accomplishments with 1993. So he says, I believe the roots of both racism, which he defines as the prejudice of the majority, the group who has power, and racialism, which Jones defines as the prejudice of the minority groups without power who begin to act out defensively, are planted deep in the psychotic side of mythology. James Earl Jones writes, racism is an offensive act, racialism a defensive act. How do you respond to absurdity? Both are sick in myth as well as a reality. And I think that is a guiding philosophy of it. It's a false equivalency that James Earl Jones lived much of his life by. And I think that's the thing where you get caught. Go ahead. What you thinking?
The video that has been circulating of him sitting next to that white lady being questioned about Black women.
Yes.
And the culture that we're currently in, where there's a lot of people questioning the femininity or the masculinity of women and blah, 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 blah. As you were reading that piece from Beowulf, I was struck with the goal of this criticism is to get people to change their behavior for the comfort of the people who feel they need to dominate or conquer that particular being, whether it's Black people, whether it's women, whether it's, fill in the blank, right?
That's right.
So in order to do that, you have to demonize people because you feel insecure and you can't master or conquer or dominate or just feel comfortable. Maybe you feel less than a man around a woman that's accomplished.
That's right.
That's a you problem, not a her problem. But what the insistence is, it forces people to take sides and then fight, because I'm gonna fight for my humanity.
You're
not gonna put me in a box, or maybe I'll capitulate because I don't want to be viewed as outside of the realm of somebody that's desirable. But you've established desire as demure and mindful and coquettish and feminine, and as opposed to letting people be and love them in their fullness. However that is, make space for it, and you figure out how to be whole. So it doesn't bother you how a person shows up. You got to appreciate everything. But the wildness, Dr. Carr, of how these commentaries have structured and shaped our own views, infected us with the same kind of thing, that you and I shouldn't be sitting and talking the way we talk. And I want to say again publicly, because I've said it on the radio a lot of times, how much I love how you love us, but you love us wholly, no matter how we show up.
Of course.
No, you say of course. But somebody with your background, you're a fraternity brother, certain, sexiness that you show up with and brilliant and all of that. You're supposed to be a walking knuckle dragging misogynist, because that's usually how you show up, looking like you look. You're supposed to be somebody that don't make space for nobody. That's not you. I mean, those you know it. I
hear what you're saying.
And it makes it easy for me to imagine, because I'm with you. The possibilities become even. This is, to me, the magic, right? Because I get to be fully me with you.
Yes.
Every Saturday and beyond.
Yes.
And as a result, I get to imagine, because now the space gets bigger, because the tent is bigger and there's more people that we can, like, what else can we do together? Is always my question. But it's easy because I don't have to fight you about who I am.
No, man.
I don't have to fold into something so that you can feel better. I don't have to be any of that, because you make space for everybody. And I think that's the model. And there's no demonization here. There's no questioning or challenging one's way in which they show up in the world. And it's beautiful, because in this space, there's everybody, and everyone's seen and acknowledged. And it's the way the world should be. And if you are threatened, or you feel some ways because your intellect isn't up to par, so you're mad, because I see that sometimes you catch strays from people who haven't read the damn things, but they got opinions. You ain't read nothing, but you got an opinion with this man who's read everything. Are you serious right now? Like, are you even having that conversation with yourself? And that's fine. You can have an opinion, but sit in the reality that there's a deficit when you're having a discussion with somebody that knows more than you. And that's fine. Guess what, though? You can know more.
Yes.
More is there for you to know too.
All of us, no
You
question.
know, there was even a pushback with the credit score. My thing is, like, listen,
Okay.
it may be steeped and rooted in racism, like the damn Electoral College, everything we're in. But how do you change it if you're not mastering
Everything.
it? Master the
Everything.
damn thing so that we can change the thing. All right,
Everything.
sorry, I'm
No. This is thank you, Prop. This is the challenge. What you just raised. How do we confront absurdity? First of all, you have to recognize it's absurdity. It's not there to be reverse engineered. It's not there to be confronted with logic. You hit it head on. The credit scores, and again, our archive is there. TIME, the 4-letter word. There's more for all of us to know. As the ancient Egyptians would say in the book of Tep, the limits of one's craft are never reached. We're going to take our last breath trying to know more. We will never know all of it. There's no way to get there. And so we're all studying. We're very clear. And again, going to that archive, the time, there are many things we haven't covered, we haven't talked about, or we haven't talked enough about. We haven't talked about what's going on in Sudan enough. We've mentioned Haiti, but we could do a deeper dive in that. We probably need to schedule one of these Saturdays and do some more back around that. What's going on in West Africa right now is very important. I mean, you see Mali now, they're taking off the air the French language channel. That news came down yesterday.
did you talk about Bahamas, Barbados?
Yeah.
Was it Mali? How many nations have come to the defense of Haiti because the UN is like, man, we're not doing anything. Well, they were like, okay, we got resources in an army. Kenya, they've all showed up for Haiti.
Well, and part of it, and the complicated problem and the complicated issue of that, because one of the reasons the Kenyans are there is because Ruto got a bag from Joe Biden and them. But if Biden did the same thing, perhaps Trump would have done. He can say "asshole" countries, but at the same time, the imperial mechanisms that are in place are still going to make them recruit black people to go in there. Brazil, Lula da Silva, then falling in line, but that same Lula has been criticizing the election in Venezuela. That same Lula is looking at Mexico and with a little bit more of a hands-off policy, because the president there, who is term limited after Scheinbaum one coming in after him, his protege, is pushing through Lopez Obrador is pushing through electing the federal judges, and the United States has pulled its ambassador. I mean, there are many things we could talk about. And we mentioned in passing, so yes, the limits aren't reached, and there are many things we could and should talk about. We can't lose sight of the fact that all of these things operate within a field of violence called settler colonialism, which is pursuant to a field of violence called capitalism. Except we live in that capitalist system. So how do you confront the absurdity of a system that puts material profit over everything? Well, part of it involves one of the byproducts of material profit and capitalism. One of the byproducts we've talked about a lot. In fact, we talked about a book called Blood and Money, which talks about the roots of this creation of capitalism as it relates to converting human bodies, the bodies of Africans, into commodities to be bought and sold, and whose labor to exploit to build that, and then to use those bodies not only to produce the labor, to produce the material commodities, cotton, rice, sugar, indigo, to create the modern world system, but, and this is why this book is so important, to create the prospect of future earnings back mapped into the present to allow for the expansion of the apparatus that exploits the labor. That, friends, would be called CREDIT, credit. So of course the credit score is racist, but race is the device on the way to the issue. The issue is capitalism. Credit itself as a concept is fundamental to foundational capitalism. And in the modern world system, it was the labor of Africans that created the possibility of credit in the first place. So much so that on the eve of the Civil War, 1861, the bodies, just the bodies of the 4 million Africans in the United States of America, the overwhelming majority of which were in captivity, just the bodies of the Africans in the United States of America in 1861, just the physical bodies were worth more than all the real property and all the money in the banks in the United States of America based on sale. And to put a nice little bow on it in terms of gender, because you're absolutely right about that, how I would show up in the world and be perceived first in my family, which means I have utter contempt for academia, but I know that's where our people are. First in my family, which means I have to go to them spaces, which means I have utter contempt for petty bourgeois politics. which is why 2 of my students yesterday, we were at Sankofa talking a long time. They're trying to decide where to go to graduate school. And in the process, they are wondering about this professor and this program and where to do this and that. And I said, they asked me how I made my decision. I said, I went to Ohio State because Jamie McDonald Williams went to Ohio State. Those were my teachers. I went to Temple because it was the only place in the world to get a PhD in African Studies at the time. Molecular Science and them were there, and that's why I went. He said, well, you made your decision based on the people. Yes, and on my elders, John Clark and Jacob Carruthers, and big brothers like Larry Crow, elders like Anderson Thompson and Zinga Bisha Heru. Most of them are ancestors now. I said, if I did anything other than sit here with you all and be in community and help you understand that the work is not at the university, that's a dying place, but the work is in the community, and it always has been. If I did something other than that, I joined Alpha Phi Alpha because I looked in the damn book. As I told y'all, if you go back in the archive, I won't tell this story in detail again. I'll just say we was in the library. I hope they didn't throw those books away at Tennessee State. I'm coming down there to see where y'all threw these damn rare books away. And they looking at the Sigma book because my friend wanted to be a Sigma. I didn't know the difference between none of them. I looked in the Alpha book because they wasn't looking in it. And I looked through there when I seen Martin Luther King and Adam Clayton Powell and Duke Ellington and Jesse Owens. When I looked through there and saw Paul Robeson, I was like, okay, so let me understand how these fraternities work. These guys here can be in any one of these. They're in all these books. And they said, no. I said, well, why in the hell would I want to be in any of them other books when everybody I know is in this one? That's how I made the decision to join Alpha. I ain't got no commitment to the. And as I told them boys yesterday, let me tell y'all young brothers something. We talked to Everett Ward yesterday, Lamont and I, on the air, with the former past president of Alpha Phi Alpha, who is now one of the people who has started the Alpha PAC, Political Action Committee. Just like every one of the so-called Divine Nine Greek-led organizations has a political action committee that is not affiliated with or connected to the nonpartisan Greek-led organizations, because they're organizing for political power and have been doing it in terms of Alpha since the 1930s. But like I told them yesterday, if I did anything other than be in the community with the university on the absolute periphery, I would be betraying my ancestors, the ones I didn't know directly and the ones I knew directly. So I have no choice but to do that. But I understand what you're saying, Prop. As I show up in the world, I can move in and out of those spaces, which is why I told them, you go to graduate school, like you go to law school, you go to medical school, you go for skills and training, but you go also to get the license to give you access for us to be able to have this conversation away from them places you went to get the license from. And this is why Knarrative and Nubia and In Class and all the work that you've done helped us do in terms of build this platform called Knarrative, and then the work you're doing 5 days a week on Sirius, and then every weekend working at this point 7 days a week with time so precious that when you're not in the public space, convening, absorbing, reflecting, being in community, helping people agree to agree, even as we have distinctions of opinion, which help us get stronger. If we understand that underlying generosity of spirit that binds us all heart to heart, even in that work, that precious time when you were not doing that, spent still with an active mind, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, absorbing whatever it is. It could be the news sites, it could be a television show, it could be a movie. Still, all of that being channeled back into the generosity of conversation. Understand that that word sacrifice, that sacrifice that we're all making, that sacrifice that would lead the Anellis to build a library in a Pobo where people are trying to figure out what they're going to eat today or next week or tomorrow, or just how their children not going to survive violence, that we're pouring into that sacrifice that says everybody buy everything out this sister store in Atlanta, or everybody go into For Harriet in Philadelphia, a Black woman-owned bookstore. These young sisters who started was in our Freedom Schools program in Philadelphia, Freedom Schools 20 years ago, and it put her now in a position where she bought the building, and they got a Black bookstore in Philly. While the next generation, all of that, it's called sacrifice, but don't think of that as a deficit. Think of it as an honor and a possibility to be able to do that. So in this moment, there are a lot of things we could talk about. We try to talk about it all. There's news reported in the New York Times today. The United States would support 2 permanent seats for African states on the UN Security Council. Linda Thomas Greenfield. Remember Linda Thomas Greenfield propping up the Israelis a few months ago. She and the deputy, who was also Black. Again, the politics of DEI, which tells you that just because you Black don't mean you're not working for the empire. Oh, I'm crystal clear about that. All of it. We all are. The American ambassador said this on Thursday, but the path to making that promise a reality is complicated. It'll be interesting. Security Council has 15 members, 5 of which have permanent seats with veto power. The other 10 members of the council rotate every 2 years. But now they're talking about who would be the members. You know, Nigeria got to be one. Now, anyway, I don't want to go too far off on that because, again, I do understand that now, because it's coming up on time and I want to make sure we get these few major big points together on this. How do you confront absurdity? Race is an absurdity. Class is an absurdity. So the critique of the Marxists, the socialists absolutely make perfect sense. The question is, how do you confront it? How do you grapple in the world we live in to create the world we want to live in? And that is the question that doesn't have one answer. Some of it requires separation. Some of it requires sitting back and understanding. After they kicked the teeth out of what was left of that pathetic attempt at reparations called affirmative action, after they kicked the teeth out of it last year, the enrollment numbers at HBCUs have swelled as the application numbers have exploded. So much so that they ain't got room for all these students. Hey, freshmen at Howard living off campus, they got to buy in hotel space for them, don't have enough classrooms. Yeah, because you let in 3,000 students. And you bragging about the number you let in, but you ain't got no place to house all these people. Guess what? Do you know the convening space for education that's unlimited? Oh yeah, by the time you figure that out, we're already here. We jailbroke that 5 years ago. So let's be very clear about that. And every day, including this past week at freshman seminar, when I went, because they took that class from us, but the sister and the crew who run it now, once a year they want to come talk to the people. I'll come talk to y'all. If I was petty, I'd be like, I'm never coming over here again. But it ain't about y'all. It ain't about that dean, so to speak, who took it, or the quote unquote president, whatever his name will escape me forever now, who did it. It's about those young people. So whether it's going over there and talking to them, or last night dragging myself back out of the house to go watch Howard play Catholic University in baseball, because a bunch of these young boys organized a team at Howard and they bring in baseball back. Shout out to them, whose parents on both the baseball team and sitting there freshman seminar, many of their parents and grandparents are Nubians, including one young sister who FaceTimed her grandma from Detroit right there while we was in the damn class. Hey, girl, I'll be there tonight. I said, I'll see you at office hours. Let's be clear. There's no cap on enrollment where we are now. There's no tuition, 60 stacks a year in the case of Howard, getting close to that at Morehouse and Spelman here. Even the state schools here, there's no difference between Democrats and Republicans. You can look up Pell Grant. You can look up subsidies for HBCUs. If you're at Florida A&M or North Carolina A&T, if you're at Virginia State or Southern, if you're at Alabama State or Tennessee State, if you're at a state school, if you're Cheney State University, then when you're paying in-state tuition or even out-of-state tuition, how far a Pell Grant will go. Don't be stupid. Because your friend, and I'm talking to those 3 black people, 2 of them black men sitting around somewhere who saying, I'm voting for Trump because them stimulus checks. As if number one, he signed the check, but the Democratic Congress passed it. We know that. We ain't gonna get into the logic because this ain't about logic. This is about illogic. Just understand that they'll take all that money. We ain't gonna worry about that. So let me bring this around again. James Earl Jones is grappling with the same question we all grapple at. As a black man born in Mississippi, who then moved to Michigan, whose grandmother raised him, we said she was the most racist person I ever knew because she was Indian and black and she hated both sides. Who grew up with his cousin, his auntie's son, Robert Earl, named for his father, Robert Earl, who was an actor who left the family to go pursue an acting career, and they reconciled later in life. And Robert Earl, who knew Paul Robeson, James Earl, who met but didn't know Paul Robeson, James Earl, who played Paul Robeson. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. This is the actual play by Philip Hayes Dean. I was looking for it Monday night, but I found it in time for class today, as I said I would when we were together Monday night, because this one I keep with me. James Earl Jones is grappling with the same challenge we're grappling with. How do you respond to absurdity? And his question on race here in the chapter Grindel, he's basically saying, I try to grapple with it by being black, but I'm not going to let this blackness define my life. And he lived his life that way. And in both chats, I see people are putting in their favorite characters. We know, James Earl Jones becomes raceless for a lot of people, except nobody's ever raceless. He's the blackness you can accept in a moment with the little chime coming in underneath and saying, "This is CNN." Like, yeah, I feel good. Okay, you feel good. You a little scared when you hear Darth Vader's voice. Luke, I am your father. Okay, I get that too. Okay, and then the white folks love James Earl Jones. Here comes Ray Kinsella kidnapping terrorist man in Boston and taking him out to Iowa, to the field of dreams. Baseball. What have Americans always turned to, Ray? Oh, people will come. They will come. They most certainly will.
So you understand that James Earl Jones is comforting to those folks because it's a blackness that is at once like a teddy bear. It's not on the cutting edge like it was when he played Othello all the time. After Paul Robeson, after Ira Aldrich, it wasn't the blackness on the cutting edge when he played Jack Jefferson, the gloss of Jack Johnson, the ghost, of course, in the house, as Muhammad Ali's trainer, Drew Mondini Brown, would call him, in The Great White Hope. You know, and it wasn't the blackness that black people love James Earl Jones for, whether it be Bingo Long's Traveling All-Stars, whether it be King Jaffe Jaffer. My son he is my son. Where is my son? My son works. In other words, y'all love King Jaffe Jaffer, no question. We know James Earl Jones, the standards there. And then there are the convergence of the governance formation, who Africans are to each other, and the social structure, like Mufasa in The Lion King. We understand. Or what we watched in that scene from Roots: The Next Generation when James Earl Jones plays Alex Haley. I found you, you old African, Kunta Kinte. And we're all sitting there with tears in our eyes as this man connects those few generations that came after Kunta Kinte to all the generations that came before when he's in Guinea. It takes Leonard Jeffries to tell that story because he's one of the scholars that works on Roots. But the whole point, though, I want to find that in another chapter in this book, which I'm going to put James Earl Jones down after that. And that's the chapter before Grindel, chapter 17. The Robeson Ruckus and Ad Hoc Art. What is the Robeson Ruckus? There are people in both these chats and through the week who will watch this later who will remember this play. Paul Robeson, Philip Hayes Dean. This copy I found many years ago in a used bookstore. I was fortunate enough as I opened it, I think I paid maybe $3 for this, to have found in this copy, tucked inside the play by the great black playwright Philip Hayes Dean. We did one of his plays at Tennessee State, Sty of the Blind Pig. Yes. The actual program from the October 1978 staging of Paul Robeson. James Earl Jones played Paul Robeson, as we know. Why did he play Paul Robeson, though? Why did he play Paul Robeson? He played Paul Robeson, as he writes in his memoir, Voices and Silences. This man who was a child had a stutter so bad he didn't talk for years. James Jones says this. He says, I had a twofold motive for playing Paul Robeson. One was as simple as my reason for needing to play Jack Jefferson in The Great White Hope. I'm going to fight the urge to say this in an imagined voice of, well, maybe. He says, there was a mountain to climb. Second, I wanted to do it for all the young and the not so young people who had not been fortunate enough to know Paul Robeson, even as little as I had. It was 1977. We lived without real heroes, without examples and alternatives. People, especially black people, searched desperately for alternatives. They craved heroes. Here was an epic hero. Paul Robeson's, James Earl Jones said, the reason I played Paul Robeson was it was a great thing. It's advancing my career after I did Great White Hope. But black people looking for heroes. Does that sound like a black man that don't understand he black? On page 249, he said, I was happy when people came to me backstage to say they had connected with Paul Robeson in our production. Women who had problems with their children came to me as if they felt that somehow, having played the man, I carried some of his mystique back to my dressing room with me. They approached me as if I had some of Paul's wisdom. My son has strayed. My daughter has this problem. Can you help? They were not seeking money. They were not seeking spiritual advice. The play had that kind of effect on people, but they sometimes did not separate the role and me. And that was disturbing. I saw how desperately they needed valid heroes. People often may believe that heroes can give clarity to their lives. There's an urgent need for that, especially among black people, and especially among black women, who, like women of most societies, have looked for men to lead the way, often to their great disappointment. Does that understand Paul Robeson? They doesn't tell you that James Earl Jones doesn't have a glimpse of understanding the challenges of black people and black women? He said these black women were coming to him after the play to say, can you help me? You just played a strong figure and my son needs that. Now, there are a lot of two-parent families, and there are a lot of families where the man isn't present or the woman isn't present and the community steps in. So I'm not getting in that. That's a governance conversation. I'm very clear about that. I hope people know that I'm clear about that. What I'm speaking to is how James Earl Jones is confronting the absurdity of race. The clip that's circulating, that's a problem for a lot of people, myself included, but not really as much for me as maybe for many, because I understand this is an absurd situation we living in. And in an absurd situation, sometimes you give up. Or sometimes you say, that's enough for me. Sometimes after you make an anthem that started as a rap beef, and I am entirely open to the possibility and would not at all be surprised that after your Super Bowl, the ones that some of y'all love so much, that's going to be in New Orleans. And I understand y'all want Lil Wayne to perform. If there's a caring less than where I am now, I would like to know, because right now I don't think I could. I really do think I couldn't. People say I could care less. Well, that means that you could care less. No, I couldn't care less about that. I won't be watching it. But the point is that, look, I would not be surprised at all if the reports come back, after which point I will then watch, because I am going to watch it at some point. I'm not going to contribute to the ratings, but I'll watch because I need to watch it. Just like I saw Snoop and them out there with them damn orange jumpsuits. But the point is that, the prison shake a leg, the prison minstrelsy at the Super Bowl initially. I would not be surprised and watch Usher's command performance, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Kendrick come out and then Drake come out. And then if you think the Hillbillies heads exploded after Tuesday, some of y'all who think that Kendrick Lamar is some kind of champion, again, not his fault. There's no Paul Robeson in this generation, because the times that Paul Robeson came of age don't exist. There's no James Earl Jones in the same way. People say, well, now the James Earl Jones, who's left? There's a lot of people left, but they come as products of their times. You remember Robert Earl Jones, his father, if you saw the opening scene of The Sting, Newman and Redford, James Earl Jones' daddy, Robert Earl Jones, is in that opening. He's part of the scam that starts the movie. But the point is this. Kendrick, in this back and forth that started with now the anthem, They Like Us, and with every passing day, the they and the us gets less clear. If you hear the song he dropped Wednesday, I found out about Wednesday. We were in class at the law school. We're packing up. They done gone overtime. I love these young people. We arguing, discussing. I'm listening. They talking about reparations, how we can get it, how we cannot get it, going through the book, chapter and verse, which is the thing I love the most at the Howard University School of Law. These students are reading and having this conversation. I'm just sitting back. I'm throwing provocative questions out. I'm listening. I'm taking notes. I'll add something else. I'll say something else. And I'm just listening. Beauty, just the genius of it, the beautiful thing. And at the end, they packed in and going over 20 minutes. And here comes one or two of the undergraduates who comes to sit in regularly. They didn't come from the Congressional Black Caucus. And the young brother says, Kendrick done dropped a new song. I said, what? Okay, so I listened to it on the train there back home. And he starts that new untitled song, as everybody in here who has heard it said, the one he dropped this week. I think it's time to watch the party die. What party? Democratic Party? No, he ain't talking about Democratic Party. He done let loose something in the world called They Not Like Us, and it's beyond him. So I'm listening to the lyrics. He said this shit done got too wicked to apologize. It's different. Get him whacked and disqualified. We even kill the killers because they taking innocent lives. Burn a whole village. We start over. Is it really that time? Why reason with these N-words as if they can't see the future first? Again, different times call for different measures. I can imagine Paul Robeson using the N-word or calling women the B-word and being embraced as a culture hero. I can imagine. No, I can't imagine it. Him or Nina Simone. But again, not a critique, an observation. Cultural meaning making marks where the culture is at any given time and space. And when you say for the culture, I suspect it would have been something different for Dizzy Gillespie or Bessie Smith than it would be in this day and age. But we continue. He says, why argue with these clowns? If the circus is well at work, just walk that Mac down. Walk that man down. It'll do everyone a solid. It's love, but tough love sometimes got to result in violence. If you parade in gluttony without giving truth to the youth, the graveyard is company. Just tell us what casket to choose. He's grappling with, it seems to me in this song, this untitled release, he's grappling with the aftermath of something that his ability, I'll stop short of genius, but if you want to say genius, I won't quibble with that. Let me just say the word for those who would say that. It's like a generation ago, people telling me R. Kelly's a genius. I said, really? And now I'm not so sure. But actually, I'm pretty sure. But then again, the question wouldn't be whether I'm sure or not, but whether people who call him a genius is sure or not. But in his genius, Kendrick is now unleashed something in the world. And they're not like us. They not like us. Who is the they? Who is the us? Because if the they is NFL owners, you damn right they not like you. And now you're going to shake the jangle leg in January at the Super Bowl. Who's the they? Who's the us again? And as people are going crazy, most of whom in that stadium have paid to get there, which means most of whom are in that stadium who have gotten corporate tickets to get there, which means most of them who are in that stadium don't look like you. Who is the they and who is the us, performer? So I wouldn't be surprised at all if Drake didn't come out. And they had a little mock beef right there on stage, because maybe the whole thing's a mock beef. This is a fascinating release by young brother Kendrick Lamar. That's a fascinating release by K-Dot that I listened to about 10 times since it came out, since I became aware of it on Wednesday. It's fascinating. How do you confront absurdity? Sometimes you turn inward. It seems to me this young brother's turning inward. It's a very interesting thing. It seems to me that Paul Robeson, portrayed by James Earl Jones, did not turn inward. He confronted it head on. In this chapter 17 on Paul Robeson, James Earl Jones said, my daddy, Robert Earl, confronted me and said, I think Paul made the wrong choices. Paul Robeson was his friend. He said the battle Paul Robeson engaged in against the state resulted in him being destroyed in many ways in terms of his public image, who he is to other people, and how in the governance formation black people treated him. I've stood in Big Bethel AME in Harlem, where his brother Ben was the pastor, where we talked about a long time ago how at Columbia's graduation in the spring, they had the black graduation at AME Zion, Big Bethel, where Ben Robeson had been the pastor, because they got a reputation of sheltering for black people when other people won't do it. But many black people backed up off him. So Paul Robeson had a choice. Here I stand. Robert Earl Jones said, I wouldn't have made the same choice. He would have paid the price. His son, Robert Earl Jones' son, James Earl Jones, played his father's friend and hero, Paul Robeson, on Broadway. And this whole chapter is devoted to what happened in the wake. Oh, man. James Earl Jones called hell because they said you watered down Paul Robeson. Did he? Let me see if I can find this quote right quick. Page 255, I think is where it's going. I don't like to write in my books, and I have an autograph copy of this somewhere, but I think it's in storage. He says, you have to understand that when you play Paul Robeson, you need to embrace his politics. They accused Philip Hayes Dean, the playwright, and most importantly, James Earl Jones, the one who brought Robeson to life in this play, of neutering Paul Robeson. You didn't deal with his politics. You want to talk about the sexuality. You want to talk about his craft and art. James Earl Jones responds, all of that is part of him. And no play is perfect. He said he got into an argument with a white woman about this. And in the argument back and forth, this is what the white woman said to James Earl Jones about Paul Robeson, who she was saying you did not portray him strong enough. She said, I effed Paul Robeson before you were born. I think I know what I'm talking about. Oh my God. Now you try to unravel that on a racial continuum, friends. Understand that this is absurd. I'll end with this on Paul Robeson and him. Carl Stokes, the journalist, before he became the mayor of Cleveland, interviewed James Earl Jones, who was his friend, about playing Paul Robeson on Broadway at a time when Paul Robeson Jr. came out against him, at a time when Coretta Scott King signed a petition against the play without seeing it, and then came to see it and said, oh, this is okay. At a time when Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee came out against James Earl Jones for doing this. At a time, it's very important. Now, I'm saying all this as a backdrop to the point that we're talking about James Earl Jones this week, and we're talking about all the roles he played, but I promise you, a small fraction of people, probably most of them, people who lived through this period, even remember that he played Paul Robeson, and a smaller fraction of that remember that there was this huge controversy around the question of race, James Earl Jones and his portrayal of Paul Robeson, a cultural meaning maker for a previous generation, because the act of playing someone like that is an act of movement and memory, just like he played Vernon Johns in the Vernon Johns story. As far as I'm concerned, one of my favorite James Earl Jones portrayals of all of the many things he did was him playing the pastor of Dexter Avenue Church in Montgomery, the pastor who they put out before Martin Luther King came because he was too forward thinking for his time. So if you want to see a movie James Earl Jones was in, Soul Man, whatever, all them buddy movies at the end, whatever, all that, all that stuff, fine. Go get the Vernon John story. One thing about James Earl Jones, he did play these iconic figures, and it allowed that embodiment to come forward. Carl Stokes concluded his commentary in the article he wrote. He said, quote, "This is a play Americans need to see. Not because an actor rises to superlative heights in his portrayal of a character, which Jones does, but because this play reintroduces Paul Robeson to the American public and causes white and black Americans to confront the atrocious treatment that they accorded this remarkable man." Ossie Davis and Ruby D. Ruby D wrote this in the Black Press, the Amsterdam News, February 11th, 1978. A play about Paul Robeson at the Lunt-Fontaine's Theater comes then as if an answer to what is a great man. Perhaps we are beginning to feel the need for such a presence again in this time fast becoming void of greatness. James Earl Jones is Paul Robeson for us for a little while, giving us a powerful picture of a powerful man who walked among us and sang and tried to fight some battles and win some victories, and by doing so, to shore up our collective dignity as human beings. With the skilled assistance of the director Lloyd Richards, the difficult task of portraying a man very much alive in memory is well met. Philip Hayes Dean is the author of Paul Robeson, and he's opened the door for us to begin to look and measure and rediscover a beautiful man in a hard time. And we are grateful to him for ourselves and for all who missed Robeson in life. And then James Earl Jones says, that play brought me and my daddy together closer than we'd ever been. Remember, his father left when he was a little boy to go find his craft as an actor. And then they reunited as adults in New York. And he said, this brought me together because my father knew Paul Robeson. He's one of his heroes. Understand the complication of who we are to other people and who we are to each other. And in that Africana Studies framework within the governance formation conversations, Paul Robeson's son did not like it, but Paul Robeson's friends didn't like part of it, like other parts of it, but everybody agreed that it reopened Paul Robeson for a next generation. They want to impress me, they need to do it again. So to wind up, I think we have to understand that in a moment of absurdity, when Beyonce can go full on country and set off a firestorm in governance structure conversations, and the social structures say, we don't give a damn what you do. We ain't giving you no one of our country music awards because it's our holy grail and you ain't gonna get them. In a society where we all remember James Earl Jones for all the things, and now they're saying he got an EGOT, except the Oscars he got were honorary because he never won it for a role he played in life, which reinforces the idea that we should have our own awards and value them more than any award anybody gives to them, even when the DEI crew shows up and it's a bunch of people who look like us voting, but who also want to preserve their viability in that system. In a moment when we understand that there was a debate that took place this week and the performance of the sitting vice president, her being herself more often than not, I cracked up when she was in North Carolina this week and she was talking and you heard some noise, and I'm thinking, okay, here's where she's going to have to address that Palestine question she really didn't address during the debate, but gave the canned answer that politicians give. She's going to have to do it. And instead of that, it wasn't the Palestinian, it wasn't the protest about the slaughter in Palestine. Whatever it was, she said this from the podium. I'm sure many of y'all see that. She said, I see you, Nuke. Oh, Kamala Harris is getting comfortable. This is fascinating to me because the more comfortable she gets, the more I think we're going to see the Kamala Harris that we want to see, because now there are non-white people who are also comfortable with it. And the guy on the other side has dropped all the pretenses like he did at the beginning of the 2016 campaign. And we can have a clear choice between a purebred racist Klansman and a human being. At that point, that human being probably has more space to be more fully human in the world. And I think there'll be even more of that as we move forward. And so we have to remember, and I'll end with this. Yesterday was being the anniversary of the assassination of Bantu Stephen Biko in South Africa at 30 years old. I watched with my students, not yesterday, 2 days ago, because I watched with students part of the Steve Biko Memorial Lecture, which is held every September in South Africa. They were at Nelson Mandela University this time. I was very honored to give a paper at the Steve Biko Symposium in 2007. I had showed my students that I had taken to South Africa. We had taken to South Africa, that Dana Williams, myself, we had taken them to South Africa and showed them how to write an abstract for an academic conference. That was one of the lessons that I was teaching in class. And I said, I'm going to write one too, because I had gotten up that morning, as I always got up 4 a.m. in the morning and walked down the Rondebosch Road in Cape Town and bought all the newspapers and sit up and talk with the people and read the newspaper in the morning. I'm going to read newspaper wherever I am. And that was a beautiful thing to do for 2 weeks in South Africa with South Africans, reading the paper and asking about this and that. And I saw advertisement for the Steve Biko conference. I saw it was a Biko conference. So I clipped it out and I brought it to class. I said, let's all write abstracts. So I sent my abstract in, and I got a response from Nkosamante Biko, the director, the son of Steve Biko, and the organization he runs, the Steve Biko Foundation in Joburg, saying that we would like to invite you to be one of the people who gives a paper at the conference. So I came back to South Africa that September and delivered that paper. So it has a special place in my heart to be able to be in that space, to be able to sit and listen and talk with former African heads of state about the questions and the problems facing Africa. Jerry Rawlings was alive at the time, former president of Ghana. The great Kenneth Kaunda, president of South Africa. Thabo Mbeki at the time was president of South Africa. And to be there to understand and help deepen the understanding that politicians are politicians, friends. And whether you're in the United States or on the continent of Africa, the Caribbean, Europe, anywhere else, Latin America, the choices you make aren't the choices that you would have made if you weren't in office. And prophets don't run for president. Sometimes you can converge the two and get close, but not as close as you would like to be in your heart of hearts. But we watched the Biko conference, a part of it, on Thursday afternoon, because they were live streaming it from Nelson Mandela University. And it forced me back into a reflective mode as the students were asking questions, as we watched young South Africans push back against the lecturer who was presenting at the time. And if I can, I'm going to end with this if I can find it, but I think I took it out of my bag, which is a real tragedy, because you know me, I'm going to obsess until I can find it. And I don't think I'm going to be able to find it quickly, because I think I didn't. That's too bad. Yeah. Anyway, there's a new book out that's a retrospective on the presidency of Nelson Mandela. And I keep it around here, but after we watched the Biko conference, I pulled it out, and I've had it in my bag all day yesterday, and it's going to bother me, but I don't think I'm going to be able to find it, because I found it right here now. It's called Reassessing Mandela, Southern African Studies. This
Undefeated.
Well, like I said, problem, Prof, is that I took so much stuff, I mean, thousands of books in the storage. And now there are things that I know I took the storage that I want, and things that I know I have here that I kept for reasons. But when they're moving stuff, I move stuff around. And so I had to go looking for it. So when this happens, I feel that thing rises up that's been in my spirit for the last few months, which is, damn, did I leave? No, I said, no, that's here. Okay, what did I do with it? And so even when I know what I did with it, I got that. It's like a phantom limb, the books. But this is a book that's very critical of Nelson Mandela, and also very celebratory of him. And it's a reminder that Nelson Mandela was a freedom fighter who became a politician. Kamala Harris is a politician who never had to be a freedom fighter. People want her to be a freedom fighter, don't understand politics. You want her to do something that you have to do. Mm-hmm. And the more we get involved, the more we can shape any politician to be or do what we want. So if people say, well, how do we confront this absurdity we live in? First of all, it has to be a we. We have to regroup and group ourselves, and then we have to take it head on. And so those are some of the things that flowed through my mind this week. Anyway, so
not anyway.
Every way. Oh, I should mention this. Frankie Beverly. We'll talk about maybe him some more, because everybody's playing Frankie Beverly. Like I said, I can't wait to see these HBCU bands and what they're going to do with Frankie Beverly. The thought of Frankie Beverly that I had this week stemmed from the first time I saw him perform in Maze back in the 80s in Dallas, Texas. I was down there. He and Patti LaBelle were on the same building.
So it was a Budweiser Superfest. It had to be.
It must have been. Come on, Prof. Yeah. And you know where I'm going, because I've never been to Essence Fair. Is that where you saw him there?
I saw him in Jersey at a Budweiser Superfest. Rick James was the headliner.
Rick James and Frankie.
Yeah, and I'm a teenager. You know, by the time Rick James came, marijuana was all throughout. I'm sitting there like top row in the Giant Stadium.
Oh no!
In the contact high.
All the smoke.
But yeah, it was Sister Sledge, Frankie Beverly and Maze, the Whispers.
No,
Shalimar, I think, was there. The Superfest was
all in good form. You know what? Remember that scene in Batman when Heath Ledger comes out and tells this town deserves a better class of criminal? He said, "This generation deserves the generations that we saw.
Yeah.
I mean, just that lineup, not as an oldies tour, but like in the prime of their, oh man.
Yes. So you had Patti LaBelle.
Patti LaBelle and Frankie Beverly is what I remember. It must have been Budweiser. You're absolutely right. And as you said, when you go there and Rick James is there, it's going to be like when you see George Clinton. You're getting a contact high. Just get your mind right when you go, because mothership's not landing without, and you at the top. That means all of the smoke. This is oh man, this is not Jack and them and all the smoke podcast. No, all that smoke hits you. Oh my God. Which, you know, but I tell you, the thing about it, just like that, just like what you saw and what we've all seen in those spaces. Frankie Beverly, and one thing I told my students this week was, the other time I felt that most viscerally and directly, not even Stevie Wonder, Earth, Wind and Fire, which is the same, but Frankie Beverly and Maze specifically, was when I was in Brazil, in Salvador, in Bahia, and there's a group called Olodum, which is a big band, but they're also like a social movement. They do social welfare stuff. But they're brilliant performers. Everybody has seen them. If you saw the Brazilian version of Michael Jackson's "They Don't Care About Us," the people with the drums, and they got the peace sign with the yellow and the red and the green. That's Olodum, short for Olodumare, which is of course Ifa, Yoruba, and then of course in Nigeria. That's a spiritual practice all involved. But when Olodum plays, we went to see them in Salvador. We were there, and the stadium is full of every age group: children, elders, families, community, and everybody knows the songs. Everybody knows the rituals, the performance. Frankie Beverly Maze the same way. So when you play and when you always remind us we are one, that's the kind of cultural meaning making that African people have had from the beginning of time. The kind of cultural meaning making that convenes community. And whether it be Lil Nas X Old Town Road, the children sang that. But They Not Like Us gave a little bit of an intergenerational gloss. Whatever his politics were or weren't, the fact that Kendrick Lamar in this latest song seems to be going introspective, which is a beautiful thing to see an artist do from time to time. Sometimes it's preternatural. Jackson Brown just turned 75. He's one of my favorite songwriters. White boy. He was 16 when he wrote These Days, if y'all know that song. How you write that song about somebody who's 75 when you were 16? Sometimes it's preternatural. But at the end of the day, Frankie Beverly and Maze represent that form of Africana cultural meaning making that taps into that deeper way of knowing. Not combative, not contrastive, but collective, convening, communal, happy feelings. Mm-hmm. You know, the idea, I tell students all the time, I will know that HBCUs are taking a real step toward true self-determination when we take off these hot-ass monastic robes, when we stop playing pomp and circumstance, and I'll listen to European classical music as fast as anybody, and we come in and your band begins to play Before I Let Go, and we all come marching in here to the electric slide to graduation, with all the dancers and all the people can dance to Before I Let Go, because that's what our faculty does. We're going to make sure you right before we let go. But we don't need no more pomp and circumstance. I will know we have reached a level of freedom when we march in Black college commencements to Before I Let Go by Maze featuring Frankie Beverly. So maybe now that he has made transition, we'll feel free to honor him at least this 1 year by bringing that in. So HBCU people, go tell your people, don't be scared. Don't be scared of the white man. Don't care what they think about you. If you play that once, they played Pomp and Circumstance once. I want to say they gave the guy who wrote it an honorary degree at Princeton or Yale. They played that in tribute to him, and then that became the commencement song. Play Before I Let Go one time at HBCU graduations. This year, you'll have the excuse that it's in tribute to Frankie Beverly. You'll never not be able to play it again. Hey, bro, we can go back. Oh, my goodness. Uh-oh. There. Oh, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to, end with some happy feelings.
Please.
So, and if y'all listen, there's a couple of people in the YouTube chat just joined the SiriusXM family. Welcome home.
Welcome home.
A brother wanted to know how to find Urban View Mornings. You just get the app, first of all. Be intentional, like the people in the YouTube chat. Hit the like button, but go on the app. Make Urban View your favorite. Search for Urban View, first of all. Make it your favorite. And then search for Urban View Mornings, where you can find Dr. Greg Carr and Lamont King not Mark Lamont Hill. He's somebody else. Lamont King and Dr. Carr, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Yes.
Check them out. And of course, make Karen Hunter.
Karen Hunter, the anchor leg, the architect.
That lady, make her your favorite.
That lady, oh my God, we laughed about that. Yeah. Y'all have to go back and listen to the app.
I will, because now that I get the context, I was like, I know he wasn't, because somebody told Lamont to put some respect on my name or whatever. I was like, I know it was Lamont. So, but I called up like that lady. I was driving around like anybody else early in the morning. I'm heading to Home Depot, and I was listening like a listener, and I called up Karen in Jersey. Karen,
he sure did.
Wait, the call screen didn't know who I was. I was like, "This is Karen Hunter." I was like, "Hey, where are you calling from?" I said, ma'am."
It was Cassie. You know,
I said, "Hello."
Cassie. Cassie's our anchor. She Chinese, so Cassie.
She had no idea who I was, so I was like, "Okay." It was humbling at the same time, because I have the same experience. I pay for my Sirius XM like everybody else. I'm driving around like anybody else is in my car. I have the app. So I wanted to have that experience because I was a disgruntled listener that had something to say. So I called up. But it was fun. All right.
Hey, look, I got to shout out Brenda. Brenda in the YouTube chat said, yeah, I went to a Budweiser Superfest in DC as a teen in the late 80s, and I saw Frankie Beverly, Luther Vandross, Atlantic Star, Gladys Knight. Woo. How do you even fit that on a stage? I would have been done.
So things. First of all, Budweiser understood the power of the black dollar.
Facts.
Budweiser put millions and millions of dollars to pay those people because they make a lot of money on touring. Facts. They had the budget because we drank the beer, and we drank the beer because they had the budget. Corporations need to be, just like politicians, put in their place and understand that we have the power. We have the power, so we need to walk into it. That's it.
Facts.
We need more of those Budweiser Superfest.
Yeah, we do.
Unfortunately, those artists, and you said something really powerful about the times. We need to have, unfortunately, the times that produced the Paul Robeson and all were also forged in a lot of trauma and terror.
No question.
But we have it now too.
We do.
But now we need to raise the bar and the standard, because you're right. They weren't calling us out of our names. We need to set the standard. So this next generation can produce the kind of art that honors us, not disrespects us. But that's our responsibility.
That's right.
So
love you.
Love you too.